Chapter 477. Ho Changming rolled his eyes and looked at Wang Tianbao and Zhu Zhonggao. His face was a little ugly. Does Protector Ho suddenly have no confidence in your disciple? 10 mid-level star grade elixirs. You only want to bet 10 high-level Chun grade elixirs. You don't even dare? Protector Wang Tianbao smiled faintly, with a provocative look. Normally speaking, a mid-level star grade medicinal pill couldn't be compared to 10 high-level star grade medicinal pills. Even 100 or 1,000 high-level star grade medicinal pills couldn't be compared to a mid-level star grade medicinal pill. However, Protector Wang Tianbao was confident. He wanted to attack Protector Ho Changming's arrogant look. Ho Changming's disciple could climb the Lingjian Peak and enter the top 68, unless a miracle happened. There were so many pro-disciples, but only 68 had a chance in the end. An outer core disciple wanted to climb up. There had never been such a precedent in Shanjian Gate. Come on, 10 mid-level star grade elixirs. I'll bet 10 high-level Chun grade elixirs. Protector Ho, do you dare to bet? Protector Zhu Zhonggao was more direct. He directly took out a few bottles and handed them to Protector Ho Changming with a smile on his face. Zhu Zhonggao, you. Protector Ho Changming stared at Zhu Zhonggao. What? You don't dare? It seems that Protector Ho's disciple is not that good. It's better to have nothing than to have something substandard. Protector Zhu Zhonggao smiled. Well, let's bet. Ho Changming gritted his teeth and stomped his feet. He grabbed the bottle of medicine from Zhu Zhonggao's hand. This was too much. Although he knew that his disciple was but he had already accepted that disciple. No matter how bad it was, he was still Ho Changming's disciple. As his master, he had to stand up for him. Protector Zhu Zhonggao was still a little stunned and did not come to his senses. Ho Changming really dared to bet, but soon Protector Zhu Zhonggao came to his senses and smiled. 10 mid-level star grade elixirs were not easy for him. It was most of his wealth. But when he thought that Protector Ho Changming could not win, it was equivalent to picking up 10 high-level star grade elixirs for free. He immediately became happy. So Protector Ho wants to see the medicinal pills before betting. Come, I happen to have 10 mid-tier star grade medicinal pills. Let's bet 10 high-tier star grade medicinal pills. Wang Tianbao smiled and immediately took out a few bottles. He didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to pick up 10 high-tier Chun grade elixirs. All right, let's bet today. Ho Changming gritted his teeth and took the bottles from Wang Tianbao's hands. Protectors, don't you want to take a gamble? Protector Ho has great confidence in his disciple. Protectors, let's bet together. It seems like Protector Ho has absolute confidence in his disciple. The two enforcers, Wang Tianbao and Zhu Zhonggao, immediately cheered. I'll bet too. Here are 10 mid-level star grade elixirs. Protector Ho, I'll support you. I also have 10 mid-level star grade elixirs. The protectors understood that although it seemed that Protector Ho Changming could pick up a big bargain, in fact, everyone knew that Protector Ho Changming could not win at all. How could they miss out on the opportunity to pick up 10 high-tier Chun grade elixirs for free? Suddenly, the protectors were very enthusiastic. They scrambled to put 10 mid-level star grade elixirs in front of Protector Ho Changming. Some protectors did not have so many mid-level star grade elixirs, so they immediately borrowed a few from other protectors to make up for it. It was rare to come across a chance to pick up high-tier Chun grade elixirs for free. If they missed it, they would feel sorry for themselves. Protector Ho Changming was stunned. His face twitched. What? Protector Ho doesn't dare to accept it? Protector Ho, are you looking down on the other protectors? Wang Tianbao and Zhu Zhonggao, the two protectors, provoked and fanned the flames. They wanted to see how Ho Changming would deal with it this time. I'll accept it. Ho Changming gritted his teeth. Things had already come to this point, and he was also in a fit of anger. So, he took all the pills in one go. Protector Ho Changming knew in his heart that unless there was a miracle, it was impossible for his disciple to enter the 68th place and climb the Lingjian Peak. But the Heaven Ascension platform was a miracle. Who could be sure that there would not be another miracle? Therefore, Protector Ho Changming smiled and secretly rejoiced. 10 high-tier, Chun-grade elixirs for free. With Protector Ho Changming's temper, he was destined to suffer. In the mysterious space, the energy of heaven and earth was rich. Su Jiehui, Zhang Qing, Wang Fan, and the others were shocked. As time passed, they did not see Su Yi return. Everyone could only sit cross-legged and cultivate. When they absorbed the energy of heaven and earth in this space, Su Jiehui, Zhang Qing, and the others realized what a treasure this place was. The energy of heaven and earth here was so rich that it had never been seen before. It also had the effect of cleansing the soul and body. Walala, Su Jiehui, Zhang Qing, and the others were shrouded in a dazzling light, revealing an invisible ancient aura. If they stayed here for a long time, it would be enough for them to transform again. Feeling such benefits, Su Jiehui, Zhang Qing, and the others did not want to miss it and concentrated on cultivating. Situ Muyang had also taken the elixir to heal his injuries. When the elixir spread through his body, Situ Muyang also knew what kind of treasure this elixir was and what benefits he had obtained. In the vast area of the ancient forest, everything was silent. In front of the huge skeleton of the divine bird, a figure sat cross-legged. His body was full of red light, and there was a flame-like light enveloping his body. At this moment, the naked skin of this figure was crystal clear, with a faint red light that constantly lingered. In Su Yi's consciousness, he was fully immersed in comprehending his expression. At this moment, Su Yi seemed to have traveled through time and returned to the ancient times. He transformed into a divine bird, spreading his wings and soaring into the sky. That drop of blood essence contained a vast amount of mysteries within it. Chapter 478. In terms of comprehension, Su Yi was no ordinary person. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cultivate the primordial chaos supreme technique. And at that moment, Su Yi's heavenly Fei ancient sutra was like a tiger that had grown wings. It was as though he had transformed into a divine bird, sweeping across the firmament with a flap of his wings, traversing the universe, leaving behind patches of scarlet smoke in the sky. Su Yi was overwhelmed with emotions. Was this the power of the strong? Su Yi immersed himself in his comprehension, completely isolating himself from everything else. His gains were immense. This was a great opportunity, an incomparably great opportunity. It was much more precious than any elixir, martial technique, or divine weapon. It was something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. That drop of blood contained many mysteries, but it was ultimately just a drop of blood. Furthermore, it was the remnant of a divine bird. There was an end to it. At some point in time, Su Yi's body emitted a dull thud. His aura trembled, as though thunder was ringing within his body. His aura had reached the 5th level of essence spirit realm without any obstruction, and it was still climbing. This was the benefit brought about by that drop of blood essence. And this benefit could only be converted into Yuan Qi, perhaps even less than 1 in 10,000. The true benefit of that drop of blood essence was that it contained a powerful remnant soul left behind by the divine bird. And this remnant soul had inadvertently aided Su Yi, helping Su Yi temper and cultivate his heavenly essence, Fei soul. Chi. At a certain moment, Su Yi's body gradually calmed down. His aura converged and dissipated into nothingness. His eyelashes trembled as he opened his eyes. Looking at his body and sensing everything within, Su Yi was visibly moved. His injuries had all healed, and he had even broken through to the 5th level of essence spirit realm. And the benefits within his body were even more astonishing. Su Yi could clearly sense that the energy contained within that drop of blood was just too great. It had tempered his body from the inside, cleansing his bones and marrow once more. Under the dual tempering of the Vajra body and the heavenly Fei ancient sutra, he felt as though he had been reborn. Success. Su Yi's eyes glistened and rippled with scarlet light. He couldn't hide the joy on his face. At this moment, his soul had completely materialized within his mind, and it was like a tiny, brilliant sun that resided there. It emanated crimson red light and was suffused with multicolored mist that rose and fell like ripples, and it carried a domineering and dignified aura that seemed capable of suppressing the primeval times and looking down proudly upon the world. However, this aura did not leak out of his mind. Heavenly origin demonic soul. He has cultivated the heavenly origin demonic soul. Suyi's heart couldn't help but beat faster. This was the demon soul of heavenly origin. At this moment, his soul had completely transformed. It seemed to have a kind of flawless radiance, filled with a majestic aura. There were even strands of hazy, purple light appearing, like the chaotic aura of the beginning of the world. It contained many mysteries and pressure flowing in his mind. All of this made Su-Yi realize that he had successfully cultivated the heavenly origin demon soul. His soul force had undergone a substantial transformation, and the benefits of this far surpassed the benefits he had gained from his physical body. Peeking into his mind, Su-Yi's mouth was curved with a smile. Su-Yi knew what else he had gained. He had also benefited a lot from comprehending the mythical bird's blood. If he were to fight with a strong opponent again, it would be a great help to him. This trip was worth it. It's about time. I don't want to miss the time to go out. Su-Yi stood up and sighed as he muttered to himself. The benefits he had gained this time had already made Su-Yi completely satisfied. He knew that he had undergone an astonishing transformation. The benefits he had gained from the mythical bird's blood essence were enough to increase his battle strength by several times. Standing up, Su-Yi stretched his body. The joints and bones in his body seemed to have been polished and tempered into steel, making crackling sounds. Su-Yi was still wearing the same tattered gray robe, the outer disciple attire of the Shinjin Gate. However, it was unable to conceal the arrogance and quick-wittedness of his body, giving off a dignified and ethereal aura that transcended the mortal world. Strictly speaking, a 16-year-old youth, who had only cultivated for a few short years, had already reached the 5th level of the origin spirit stage. This was already enough to make people's jaws drop. However, what was truly frightening about Su-Yi was his battle strength. With his cultivation at the 5th level of the origin spirit stage, in terms of battle strength, he had long surpassed those of the same level. It was no longer difficult for him to kill opponents of a higher level. After this encounter, his battle strength had once again soared. If news of such a youth being so valiant were spread, it would be enough to shock everyone. This is just the foundation, but it's still far from enough. I still need to become stronger. Su-Yi was very happy, but not complacent. He was very clear in his heart that all of this was just the foundation. Strictly speaking, it was still the foundation. He was only at the puny origin spirit stage. Against an existence like the sacred mountain, his cultivation was merely an ant in front of an elephant. Senior, many thanks. It's a pity that I'm unable to bury you in peace. Looking at the gigantic, divine bird skeleton before him, Su-Yi gave a respectful bow. All of this was thanks to this demon-race divine bird senior. Su-Yi was filled with gratitude and wanted to bury this divine bird skeleton in peace. However, the gigantic skeleton was just too big, and there was simply no way to bury it. Crack, crack. As Su-Yi's voice faded, faint cracking sounds suddenly rang out from the gigantic skeleton. Subsequently, under Su-Yi's astonished gaze, the gigantic skeleton began to loosen, as 2 rays of scarlet light seemed to gush out from within its gigantic and deep eye sockets. Walala! All of a sudden, a blazing aura erupted from within the gigantic skeleton as blazing flames spread outwards. In front of Su-Yi's naked eyes, the gigantic skeleton was enveloped in a sea of flames as it roiled and burned. In just a few breaths' time, it turned into nothingness as it tore through the air and disappeared. The gigantic skeleton that was as large as a mountain disappeared in an instant. Under the surging flames, Su-Yi retreated quickly, and his vision returned to normal. Not even a speck of dust was left behind. It was as if the divine bird skeleton had never appeared. Walala! Something rolled and landed beside Su-Yi's feet. It was an egg. V latest chapter percent section. Part 1. It was an oval-shaped egg the size of a goose egg. However, the eggshell was light gold. An egg. Su Yi's eyes moved, and his eyes were filled with surprise. An egg had actually appeared. An egg that could survive the flames that could burn everything just now was definitely not simple. He picked up the egg in his hand. It was neither light nor heavy, and he carefully sized it up. Other than its color, it was not much different from an ordinary egg. However, Su Yi knew that it was definitely not an ordinary egg, so he conveniently put it into his interspatial bag. Afterward, Su Yi summoned the mysterious space again. When Su Yi's figure entered the mysterious space, he quietly saw Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Wang Fan, and the others, who were breathing and adjusting their breaths. Boom! A vast aura swept out, shaking the surroundings. Chapter 479. It was Situ Muyang. Energy surged around his body as his aura continued to rise. Such a commotion alarmed Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the rest who were in the midst of their breathing exercises. They retracted their hand seals, retracted their auras, and opened their eyes. Boss Su Yi. Upon seeing Su Yi, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the rest immediately rushed over in excitement. Su Jiahui's eyes moved, her face sparkling and translucent, her skin as smooth as snow. Her exquisite curves were visible from within, while her aura rippled outwards. Her eyes were enchanting, and her aura had transformed, becoming even more enchanting as she gave off a certain charm. See positive Y version / first Besu. Yi's gaze swept across the several people who had stepped forward, as a smile rose from the corners of his mouth. The mysterious space had many uses for everyone. Although it had only been a few days, under the effects of the mysterious space, all of them had broken through a level. More importantly, they had undergone an invisible transformation. Boss Su Yi, this is Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the rest were agitated and wanted to say something. I'll tell you later, someone is breaking through. Su Yi interrupted Zhang Qing and Lu Ji, as his gaze once again landed on the real Situ Muyang. Lu Ji and the rest followed Su Yi's gaze. Boom! His aura shook the surrounding space as the energy of the world rippled. A vast and mighty aura spread out from Situ Muyang's body. The commotion did not last for long, as the aura from Situ Muyang's body once again rose to another level, as the aura of the fourth level origin spirit stage spread out. The aura gradually calmed down as the light on Situ Muyang's body dissipated, and everything returned to normal. Plah, he opened his eyes. His gaze was so clear that it didn't seem to contain any stray thoughts or vulgarity. The light fluctuated and slowly retracted. He then stood up. This young man was only 13 or 14 years old. He was even younger than Su Jiahui. His fitting black robe was very shabby at the moment, but could not hide his slender figure and temperament. He had sword-like eyebrows, phoenix eyes, a straight nose, and thin lips. He was very handsome. As he gazed at such a youth, even Su Yi felt somewhat envious. At such an age, he was still chased into the barbaric demon forest, living an inhumane life, and nearly dying. On the other hand, this fellow was already at the fourth level of the origin spirit stage. Across the entire continent, he was likely in existence at the apex of his generation. This was Su Yi's envy, but it was only a little. With a backer like the Shunjian Gate behind him, it was indeed different. However, Su Yi clearly understood that Situ Muyang was definitely not an ordinary second generation. At such an age, he had been sent by sect master Situ Muyang to the thousand-sword battlefield to be tempered like the outer and inner sect disciples. Being alone in this place and undergoing the same tempering, one's life could be in danger at any time. The achievements that Situ Muyang had today were definitely not due to the backing of the Xinjiang Gate. When Situ Muyang saw Su Yi, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the rest, he swept his gaze over everyone before walking up to Su Yi's side. Looking at Su Yi, He opened his thin lips slightly and said with a somewhat aged expression, "What you gave me is a treasure, a great treasure." At this moment, Situ Muyang was the clearest about what kind of benefits he had received. Breaking through from the second level of the Origin Spirit stage to the fourth level of the Origin Spirit stage, consecutively breaking through 2 levels was the least or even a negligible part of the benefits. The true benefits of the spiritual liquid were the cleansing of one's soul, the cleansing of one's bones and marrow. "You saved me." Su-yi smiled faintly. Situ Muyang had risked his life to save him. Although the spiritual liquid was heavy, it was worth it. He was also happy for Situ Muyang that he was able to break through 2 levels in a row. Of course, the amount of spiritual liquid that Su-yi gave to Situ Muyang was different from the amount he had given to Su Jiahui and the rest. It was slightly more. After all, Situ Muyang's cultivation was much stronger than Zhang Qing and the rest. Didn't we form an alliance? Situ Muyang smiled bitterly. Compared to him blocking the attack for that fellow, the benefits he received were simply too worth it. Furthermore, even if he did not block the attack, with that fellow's mysteriousness, it was unlikely that anything major would have happened. Looking around, Situ Muyang's gaze swept across Su Jiahui and the rest. He could sense that Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the rest had also made new breakthroughs. Everything within this space was mysterious. He asked, "Where's this place? What is this place?" Hearing this, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the rest immediately looked toward Su-yi. This was also what they wanted to know just now. Su-yi looked at everyone, his expression suddenly turning serious as he said, "I had no choice but to bring everyone here. This is a treasure that I have on me. There are many mysteries hidden within this space. However, I have to tell everyone that this place is too important to me." Hearing Su-yi's words, everyone stared at Su-yi. They could all feel Su-yi's seriousness. In fact, there was even a hint of majesty within that seriousness, which made their hearts tremble for no reason. "I know what you want to say. If it wasn't for this place, I'm afraid that we'd be dead already. Everyone has secrets. I, Situ Muyang, swear that I'll never tell anyone about this treasure on you. However, I also have a condition." Situ Muyang looked at Su-yi. He was so handsome that he was like a handsome little brother next door. People could not help but want to get close to him. However, the light that occasionally flashed in his clear eyes made people not dare to underestimate him. "What is it?" Su-yi asked Situ Muyang. "Give me back my interspatial bag. I want to change my clothes." Situ Muyang rolled his eyes at Su-yi. Hee, Su-yi laughed. A interspatial bag appeared in his hand, and he passed it to Situ Muyang. "Boss Su-yi, don't worry. I, Zhang Qing, swear that if I tell anyone about this, I'll be struck by lightning." Zhang Qing swore that he would never tell anyone. If it wasn't for Su-yi, how could he be where he was today? How could he have all the opportunities he had today? Lu Ji, Wang Fan, and Tan Xiao also swore that without Su-yi, they would not be where they were today. Brother Su-yi, Su Jiahui, also swore. She raised her delicate hand and was about to make an oath. "All right, I trust everyone." Su-yi gently patted Su Jiahui's head and smiled. If he really did not trust them, he would not have brought everyone here. However, he knew that people's hearts were unpredictable. But now, he could only see if he had misjudged them. "Stop making so much noise. You're disturbing my cultivation." Suddenly, there was a sound that came from the spiritual medicines. Multicolored light filled the air and revealed itself. That was the blood jade spirit ginseng. It had been hiding in the ground to cultivate. This is the demon illusionary realm. When the blood jade spirit ginseng sensed the aura and medicinal fragrance, Zhang Qing, Su Jiahui, and the others were stunned. Although they did not know what it was, they could feel that it must be a treasure. Moreover, it could speak human language. Was this the legendary demon illusionary realm? Demon illusionary realm's blood jade spirit ginseng. Chapter 480. Grandpa Ginseng. Su-yi said. He could feel that the blood jade spirit ginseng's aura was getting thicker and thicker. About 48 hours. Help me find a place. I want to undergo my tribulation. The blood jade spirit ginseng's light fluctuated, and it only said these words before disappearing into the sea of spirit herbs. Watching the blood jasper ginseng disappear, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others were still stunned, unable to recover from their shock. About 48 hours. So accurate. Su Yi raised his eyebrows, but he was a little excited. The blood jade spirit ginseng was finally at the stage where it could undergo its tribulation again. They seem to have obtained some benefits too. Sita Muyang looked to the side and saw two beasts covered in light. They were the Xianyang golden demon falcon and the wolf-head bat leader. At this moment, the two beasts were surrounded by light and their eyes were closed. They seemed to be immersed in some kind of benefits. Su Yi smiled. He knew that this mysterious space was more beneficial to the barbaric beasts than humans. He didn't expect that it would help the Xianyang golden demonic falcon and the leader of the wolf-headed demonic bats. Wow, the mystical spirit fruit seems to be different. Zhang Qing cried out in surprise. Not far away, there was spiritual energy. On top of a tree that was about the size of a bowl and about 1 zhang tall, there was a dark blood-colored radiance. There were about 40 to 50 baby fist-sized fruits hanging on the tree. They were even more translucent, and there was a mist flowing around them. Everyone's attention was attracted to Zhang Qing. Su Yi also went to the profound spirit tree and carefully inspected it. The profound spirit tree seemed to have really come to life, especially the profound spirit fruits. Originally, they were green with a tinge of dark red, but now they had all turned green, sparkling and translucent like beautiful green jade. The mystical spirit fruits are ripe. Sita Muyang's eyes lit up. The mystical spirit fruits were ripe. I feel that the mystical spiritual fruit has changed. Sita Muyang had a feeling that these mystical spirit fruits were different from a few days ago. This difference did not come from maturity, but from an invisible feeling. Su Yi inspected the fruits with a smile on his face. Only Su Yi knew what had happened to the profound spirit tree and the profound spirit fruit. Both of them were undergoing a transformation. With the benefits of the mysterious space, their medicinal effects were much better than before. The mystical spirit fruit has matured. Su Yi plucked a mystical spirit fruit and handed it to Su Jiahui. At the same time, he said, I've said it before, we'll share blessings and misfortunes. Everyone should have a share of the mystical spirit fruit. Su Jiahui was so happy that she was a little dazed, as if she was still in a daze. She took the mystical spirit fruit from Su Yi's hands in a daze. Everyone should have a share. Several mystical spirit fruits were carefully plucked by Su Yi and handed to Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Tan Chao, Wang Fan, and Lu Ji. Receiving the mystical spirit fruit, everyone was overjoyed and excited. This was the mystical spirit fruit, a treasure that many direct disciples could not obtain. But now, it had fallen into their hands without any effort. Once consumed, they would receive shocking benefits. Yours. Su Yi handed a mystical spirit fruit to Sita Muyang. The mystical spirit fruit is a treasure. It needs to be stored in a jade container, otherwise, its medicinal effects will be affected. Sita Muyang said. He took out a jade container from a spatial bag that Su Yi had just returned to him. As if it was tailor-made, he placed the mystical spirit fruit inside. You don't plan to consume it now? Su Yi was a little surprised. Sita Muyang's jade container was clearly prepared in advance, as if he was determined to obtain the mystical spirit fruit before entering the million-sword battlefield. Although you can consume the mystical spirit fruit now, if you want to maximize its medicinal effects, you have to consume the mystical spirit fruit when you break through from the 9th level of the origin spirit stage to the Yuan Zhen stage. When you consume the mystical spirit fruit, then you will be able to reach the Yuan Zhen stage in one fell swoop. Sita Muyang informed Su Yi. I see. Su Yi really did not know about this. He had originally wanted to try the mystical spirit fruit, but after hearing this, he immediately dismissed the idea. Young sect master, it shouldn't be a big deal to consume it now, right? Zhang Qing asked Sita Muyang. It shouldn't be a big deal. The medicinal effects should be there. Sita Muyang nodded. Do you all want to consume the mystical spirit fruit now? Su Yi asked Zhang Qing and the rest. Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, Tan Chao, Wang Fan, and Su Jia hesitated for a moment before nodding. They had their own plans. They did not know how long it would take for them to reach the 9th level of the origin spirit stage. If news of them possessing the mystical spirit fruit were to leak out, they did not know what kind of trouble it would cause. They might not even be able to protect themselves, so it was better to consume it first. All right, you all can continue your seclusion here and consume the mystical spirit fruit without worry. Su Yi nodded. He understood the concerns and thoughts of Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the rest. As outer sect disciples, they had entered this place to strengthen themselves and search for opportunities and fortunes. Once they left this place, they would be able to perform well and successfully become inner sect disciples. Therefore, the most important thing now was to seize every opportunity to strengthen themselves. Something is missing from my space bag. Situ Muyang kept the mystical spirit fruit and checked his own space bag. To his surprise, he discovered that quite a few things were missing from his space bag. Most importantly, a mid-level Emperor-grade martial skill was missing. Situ Muyang naturally knew what he had lost. Shulong's Heavenly Wind Boundary, a wind attribute mid-level Emperor-grade martial skill. Hee, I opened it out of curiosity. Su Yi smiled embarrassedly and did not hide the truth. Situ Muyang was stunned for a moment. This guy's guts were a little too big. Then, looking at Su Yi, Situ Muyang felt helpless. This guy's guts were big to begin with. Moreover, this guy did not know where the Shulong's Heavenly Wind Boundary came from. However, Situ Muyang was a little doubtful. With this guy's cultivation, it seemed impossible for him to open the martial skill. Let me tell you, that martial skill is stronger than you think. It also has a great origin. You'd better return it to me, or you'll be in big trouble. Situ Muyang said, I'll return it to you. I don't want it anymore. Su Yi rolled his eyes at Situ Muyang and took out a scroll and threw it to Situ Muyang. This was the Shulong's Heavenly Wind Boundary martial skill scroll, but Su Yi had already opened it. You really opened it? Situ Muyang stared at Su Yi in disbelief. This guy actually opened the martial skill scroll. The elders had said that it was impossible to open it if one's cultivation was not high enough. I opened it out of curiosity. Su Yi smiled embarrassedly. It was not easy to open the martial skill scroll. Chapter 481. I've returned the skill to you. Su Yi rolled his eyes at Situ Muyang and looked at the skill scroll in Situ Muyang's hand. But it's already been opened. Situ Muyang said. A scroll that had already been opened was like a piece of waste paper. What was the use of returning it to him? I only took a look. Besides, I've already returned it to you. Su Yi did not mind and said to them, Besides, one mystical spiritual fruit is enough. It's useless for you to take more. Then why do you need so many? I have my uses for them. Shulong has a history in the Heavenly Wind domain. You will get into big trouble if you cultivate without permission. It's okay. I'll just not cultivate. Then you should at least compensate me. Compensation? That's good too. I'll bring you out to find the sword pattern stone. Swoosh, swoosh, 2 figures flew out from the mysterious space. It was Situ Muyang and Su Yi. At this moment, the 2 youths had changed into clean robes. Situ Muyang was still in his black robes, and Su Yi was still wearing the outer disciple robes of the Xinjing Gate. However, it could not hide the aura that flowed around them. When Situ Muyang and Su Yi came out of the mysterious space, they looked at the flat land in front of them. Everything was destroyed except for the huge skeleton. It was very strange. I don't know what happened, but there shouldn't be any danger. Su Yi told Situ Muyang. Where did the skeleton go? It's an extraordinary item. Situ Muyang was still pondering. He suspected that the disappearance of the skeleton might have something to do with Su Yi. After all, Su Yi had the ability to block the terrifying raging flame storm and use the treasure to save everyone. Even so, Situ Muyang did not believe that Su Yi could hide such a huge skeleton. No matter how big his interspatial bag was, it would not be able to contain it. However, the huge skeleton had a mysterious origin. It must have been extremely powerful when it was alive. Every part of the skeleton was a treasure. If he could hand it over to the experts of Shanjian Gate to study, he might be able to gain a lot. I don't know either. Everything here is very mysterious. Su Yi shrugged. The huge skeleton combusted and turned into ashes, which also made Su Yi feel strange. Forget it. Let's think of a way to get out of here first. I reckon that we will have to leave the Myriad Sword battlefield in a few days. We still need to find enough sword vein stones. Otherwise, we won't be able to ascend the spiritual sword peak after leaving the Myriad Sword battlefield. Sita Muyang did not think too much about it. They had already wasted so much time in the ancient forest. Including the time he used to consume the spiritual liquid, they would probably only have a few more days before leaving the Myriad Sword battlefield. However, they did not have enough sword pattern stones on them. Let's go. It's time to find some sword vein stones. He pursed his lips and smiled. His eyes flickered. Those personal disciples should have also obtained a lot of sword vein stones. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, there was the sound of wind breaking in the distance. From afar, a figure was heading towards them. Did someone else come in? Su Yi and Sita Muyang's eyes suddenly moved. If someone else had appeared, then there should be someone else like them who had also entered this place. Whoosh! Soon, a young man appeared. This young man was not ordinary. He had a handsome face and dazzling eyes. He was dressed in a battle robe and had an extraordinary temperament. How long have you been in here? The young man was in his early 20s. On his battle robe was the emblem of a personal disciple of Xinjiang Gate. He looked at the empty field, and then his eyes fell on Su Yi and Sita Muyang. His eyes flickered. How did you come in? Is there anyone else? Sita Muyang and Su Yi also looked at the young man curiously. They wanted to know if there was anyone else. Meng Xian was taken aback. He looked at the two young men. One was obviously an outer sect disciple, and the other was even younger. It didn't seem likely that he was an elite disciple. Meng Xian didn't recognize them, so they were probably outer sect disciples. However, these two outer disciples seemed to be different from the other outer disciples. They did not seem to put him in their eyes at all. Meng Xian could not help but feel surprised. I'll ask you again. How long have you been in here? Did you find anything special? Meng Xian's face darkened. Why are you so arrogant? I won't tell you. What can you do to me? Sita Muyang was a little annoyed. The young man's attitude made him a little unhappy. Do you think this guy has a sword vein stone on him? Su Yi glanced at Meng Xian and smiled mysteriously at Sita Muyang. He didn't mind at all. Sword vein stone, he should have it. Sita Muyang was slightly stunned, and then he immediately understood. Su Yi had said at the beginning that he would be ready to snatch the sword vein stone from the hands of the personal disciples. At this time, there were only a few days left. Sita Muyang also knew that he had no choice. Otherwise, he would not have the chance to go to Lingjian Peak to fight. Coupled with the fact that he had been with Su Yi recently, Sita Muyang also felt that it was a good idea to snatch a personal disciple's sword vein stone. Anyway, this was the battlefield of 10,000 swords. There were not many rules. Brother, do you have a sword vein stone on you? Can you lend me some? Su Yi looked at Meng Xian and smiled warmly. Say that again. Hearing Su Yi's words, Meng Xian's face completely changed. The aura on his body began to fluctuate. The two youths in front of him clearly did not care about him at all. What do they mean by borrowing the sword vein stone? They clearly wanted to snatch his sword vein stone. Why are you so loud? Isn't it just borrowing some sword vein stones? Sita Muyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man in front of him indifferently. This was a personal disciple, but Sita Muyang did not take it to heart. All along, Sita Muyang had wanted to compete with the personal disciples of Xinjiang Gate. Moreover, he had just broken through not long ago. Moreover, he had broken through 2 levels consecutively to reach level 4 Origin Spirit Realm. This made Sita Muyang not take the young man in front of him seriously. Ha ha ha! Meng Xian laughed, but his laughter was slightly gloomy. He gazed at Su Yi and Sita Muyang as he said, I have no interest in knowing who the two of you are. but I'll say it one last time. Tell me everything you've seen here, otherwise you'll definitely regret it. Su Yi sighed slightly and looked at Meng Xian. I have no interest in knowing who you are, but I'll say it again very seriously. Hand over the sword vein stone and the space bag on you, or I guarantee that you'll regret it. Okay. Chapter 482. In Meng Xian's heart, he treated Su Yi and Sita Muyang as outer sect disciples. He was an existence that had left his name on the sword pagoda. Normally, he would not pay attention to these outer sect disciples in the sect. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Meng Xian had already pounced forward. His feet touched the ground as he swooped down. A palm print was the first to strike at Su Yi. Leave this guy to me. Su Yi had yet to make a move, but Sita Muyang could no longer hold himself back. He took a quick step forward and raised his hand to slap Meng Xian. Bang! The two palm prints collided and a muffled sound was heard. Under Meng Xian's astonished gaze, his palm went numb. His body was also forced back several steps. Sita Muyang took a few steps back before stabilizing his body. However, there was a smile on his face, as if he was very satisfied with the result. Sita Muyang was just casually testing the waters. After breaking through 2 stages, his combat strength had indeed increased by a significant amount. Compared to Sita Muyang's satisfaction, Meng Xian's feelings were the complete opposite. He was shocked that the seemingly young youth in front of him had actually reached such a stage. So you have some ability? Meng Xian's expression had completely changed. He knew that he had misjudged. Such a youth could not possibly be an outer sect disciple. More than just some ability. Take this. Sita Muyang leaped up and took the initiative to attack. He had just broken through and wanted to test himself. Meng Xian had no way to retreat, nor did he intend to. He did not believe that he could not even defeat a young youth. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the two figures collided violently. As they collided, a muffled sound was heard. Energy surged and Yuan Qi shot out. Su Yi watched the battle from the side. He was not worried about Sita Muyang. Instead, he was curious about the personal disciple. He carefully observed every move he made. But soon, Su Yi was able to determine. This personal disciple was indeed strong and definitely not ordinary. If Sita Muyang had encountered him before his breakthrough this time around, it would truly be difficult for him to deal with him. But now that Sita Muyang's cultivation had skyrocketed, the result was already set in stone. Boom! The more Meng Xian fought, the more alarmed he became. Finally, he took the lead and no longer held back his aura, the aura of a 4th-level origin spirit realm martial artist sweeping out. Meng Xian's eyes were like lightning. His hands moved, causing the air to ripple. He executed a martial technique that enveloped Sita Muyang. 4th-level origin spirit realm, huh? Too bad I'm at that level too. Sita Muyang had a calm expression on his face, as he no longer held back the aura of a 4th-level origin spirit stage practitioner. His aura rumbled as various martial skills emerged one after another, unceasingly attacking Meng Xian. How can he be so strong? Meng Xian's face had unknowingly turned completely serious. He knew that he had completely misjudged this time. This youth was actually such a terrifying opponent. This youngster had actually reached the 4th level of the origin spirit realm at such a young age. His battle prowess was even more frightening, to the point that he was able to continuously suppress him. Roar! With a roar, Meng Xian's Yuan Qi took form. Water attribute Yuan Qi erupted from Meng Xian's feet, condensing into an aquatic beast that seemed to be alive. Its entire body was covered in scales like a flood dragon, and there were even sharp claws under its abdomen that burned fiercely as it swiped at Sita Muyang. Screech! The cry of a ferocious bird rang out from under Sita Muyang's feet as the phantom of a large black rock spread its wings and soared into the sky. The phantom of the large black rock was also burning fiercely, its wings spanning several feet. Black light pervaded the air, and its ferocious eyes were like tiny blood moons, giving off a ferocious and intimidating aura. When such a large black rock phantom appeared, the aura of a beast pervaded the air, clearly affecting the former's large python beast, as if it was being suppressed by its eyes. It's the nether void rock. Meng Xian recognized that the beast form that the young man had condensed from his yuan qi was actually the dark nether rock. This was a true barbaric beast of the demon clan. Its bloodline was many times stronger than the barbaric beast that he had condensed. Let's continue. Situ Muyang's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, and his hair fluttered in the wind. He stepped on the nether void rock phantom and soared into the sky. The black light was like a torrential flood as it swooped down towards the former, continuously suppressing him. Boom! At this moment, Situ Muyang's combat strength had greatly increased. Every move he made caused sand and stones to fly around, and the energy swept out, as if the surrounding void was also shaking. Most #new/X chapter W Super D % such a nether void rock complemented Situ Muyang, and it was like adding wings to a tiger. Although Meng Xian was strong, he was still suppressed by Situ Muyang, who was a little abnormal. After Situ Muyang used a powerful trump card at the end, Meng Xian was still injured. Puff! Meng Xian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. The large python beast formed from Yuan Qi was directly crushed by the nether void rock. Chi, Meng Xian's figure retreated, but as he retreated, he instantly borrowed the momentum to retreat. Meng Xian already knew that he had fallen into a disadvantageous position and could not defeat this young man. Although he could not accept it and was deeply shocked, he did not lose his mind and immediately retreated. Whether it was to preserve his strength or to be afraid that the sword-patterned stone in his space bag would be taken away, Meng Xian knew that he could not continue to be entangled with this young man. It's too late to escape. However, just as Meng Xian was about to take advantage of the momentum to retreat, a voice resounded in his ears, and a figure quietly appeared behind him. Meng Xian's heart suddenly trembled, and a bad premonition surged in his heart. A blazing aura immediately landed on his back. Bang! A blazing gust of wind, carrying layers upon layers of continuous enormous force, shattered Meng Xian's Yuan Qi defense. Under the impact of the enormous force, his body staggered forward and then fell head first onto the ground. Puff! Meng Xian spat out another mouthful of blood, and his expression was extremely painful. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with shock. It turned out that it was not only the black-clothed youth who was powerful. Meng Xian originally thought that the youth in the outer sect disciple's attire was really an outer sect disciple. However, at this moment, it seemed that the youth was even more powerful than the black-clothed youth. Meng Xian quickly wanted to get up and retreat, but he was not a match for one person, not to mention there were two youths. Meng Xian regretted it and wanted to quickly leave. Chila! A claw landed on Meng Xian's shoulder, and a huge force crushed down. Meng Xian was lifted up, and his shoulder, which was held by the claw, spasmed in pain. Blood flowed out, and his entire body could not move. You'll regret it if you say it. Su Yi did not show much mercy. He held Meng Xian and unceremoniously took out 3 space bags from Meng Xian's arms and put them into his own before throwing Meng Xian back to the ground. Puff! Who are you? Meng Xian did not know if he was seriously injured or if he was provoked by Su Yi and Situ Muyang, but he vomited blood again. Chapter 483. However, at least Meng Xian was certain that these two youths were definitely not outer disciples. It was impossible for inner disciples to have such strength. What Meng Xian found strange was that if these two youths were direct disciples, it was impossible for him not to know the direct disciples of the Xinjiang Gate. It doesn't matter who we are. Tell me about the situation outside. Su Yi smiled. At Section M of the latest chapter, yes, tell me how you came in. Situ Muyang's eyes were clear, and his face was still a little immature. These two youths were quite young and looked completely harmless. I know, you're Su Yi. Meng Xian suddenly remembered that these two youths, one of whom was carrying an eye-catching broken sword, were exactly the same as the rumored Su Yi. Am I that famous? Su Yi raised his eyebrows. It seemed that he was quite famous. Sita Muyang looked helplessly at Sui. With this guy's courage, it would be difficult for him not to be famous. Meng Xian was stunned. It seemed that his guess was right. If he had known it was this guy, he would have been on guard. He actually let himself meet this guy. Let's talk about how you came in. What's the situation outside recently? Sui asked. There was nothing he could do about being famous. He wanted to know the recent situation outside. Meng Xian originally didn't want to say much. He was a direct disciple of the Xinjiang Gate, and a direct disciple with a reputation in the Sword Pagoda. In this generation of the entire Divine Sword sect, Meng Xian, was also an illustrious and famous existence. He had already been seriously injured and had his interspatial bag stolen. It was already embarrassing enough for him if word got out. If he was still threatened and word got out, he would not be able to raise his head in the future. Meng Xian wanted to grit his teeth and endure. What could these two guys do to him? But in the end, Meng Xian had no other choice. With hatred and fear in his eyes, he told Su Yi and Sita Muyang everything they wanted to know. This was because Su Yi had threatened to strip him naked and throw him somewhere for all the disciples of the Xinjiang Gate to see. From Meng Xian's mouth, Su Yi and Sita Muyang found out that Meng Xian didn't enter this place alone. Instead, for some reason, the ancient forest had completely opened and revealed itself. Many people had already entered this place. Meng Xian was the earliest to enter, and he wanted to seek opportunities. During this period of time, something had also happened in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. Strictly speaking, it was something that happened after the personal disciple came in. There were quite a number of direct disciples, and their cultivations were not bad. The 10,000s disciples, not a single ones the is 10, the direct disciples, also found out about what had happened to the intersect disciples. Some people said that you took the is. Others said that you controlled those savage beasts to steal the intersect disciples' space bags and many sword pattern stones, causing a great plunder. Meng Xian's heart trembled as he looked at Su Yi. Such a young man had actually robbed tens of thousands of intersect disciples in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He had taken all these mysterious and had many sword pattern stones on him. How shocking was that? What? When Sui heard this, he was a little surprised. This news had spread, and no one should know about it. In an instant, Sui pondered. Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others knew the most, but they had not left his side. If this news spread, it would be even worse for them. Therefore, Su Jiahui and the others could not have spread the news. Sita Muyang did not know much. He only knew that the is mysterious was with him, and he had not left his side. Therefore, it was not likely. Su Yi cannot think of a reason, unless someone else knew the language of beasts, or he had accidentally left some clues that led to others guessing. You did it! Sita Muyang looked at Su Yi in shock. He had been in the battlefield of 10,000 swords and naturally knew what had happened. The savage beasts had gathered and formed a beast horde, robbing all the intersect disciples. He was also guessing the reason. Now that he heard this news, Sita Muyang thought about it again. If Su Yi could subdue the Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon and the Wolf-Headed Bat Leader, he would naturally be able to subdue the other leaders of the savage beasts. Based on Sita Muyang's understanding of Su Yi, he knew that Su Yi was definitely capable of doing such a thing. This news could be said to be 100% true. The plundering of the battlefield of 10,000 swords was secretly controlled by this guy, and he had robbed tens of thousands of intersect disciples. Let's talk about it later. We're on the same side. Su Yi looked at Sita Muyang and smiled mischievously. He wanted to know who had spread the news from the young man. Unfortunately, Meng Xian did not know who was the one who spread the news first. Right now, all the direct disciples are looking for you. Ryugan River, Yin Lingfeng, Gu Chunyu, and Gong Qi will not let you go. There are also many people who have formed an alliance and are looking for you everywhere. Meng Xian said, this kid in front of him would definitely not be able to escape. How could Ryugan River and the others let him go after taking all the mystical spirit fruits? In this battlefield of 10,000 swords, there was no way he could escape. This news is quite useful. Su Yi pondered. He already knew what he wanted to know. The ancient forest had completely opened, and Su-yi guessed that it had something to do with the skeleton of the mythical bird. The news of him taking the mystical spirit fruits and all the spatial bags had already spread out. He could not stay here for long. If he was discovered, he would be in big trouble. Su-yi was not afraid of ordinary Shunjian Gate disciples. However, it was said that there were a few extremely powerful direct disciples in Shunjian Gate. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Su-yi was not afraid of such direct disciples, but after all, they had the advantage in numbers. Now was not the time to fight. His goal was to obtain the greatest reward from the Shunjian Gate. Now that the ancient forest was completely exposed, there was no need to find an exit. Let's go. Su-yi gestured to Situ Muyang and left. Dusk. The sunset covered the sky as the sun set. The cliffs of the forest were steep, and there were many places to hide. It was difficult for non-flying birds to climb up. Su-yi and Situ Muyang both had their own methods. They soared into the sky and prepared to spend the night. You really robbed all the inner disciples? Situ Muyang looked at Su-yi, although he knew that Su-yi would definitely do it. And it was Su-yi who did it. He could not help but feel his heart tremble. After all, there were tens of thousands of inner disciples. Chapter 484. Situ Muyang's gaze was fixed on Su-yi. His throat moved a little before his expression calmed down. He let out a long breath and said to Su-yi, I understand. You wanted to form an alliance with me on purpose, right? Su-yi's expression did not reveal anything as he said, of course, with your strength, if we join forces, those personal disciples won't be able to do anything to us. You wanted to form an alliance with me because you were afraid that the news would be exposed. At that time, there might be big trouble. The elders and protectors of the Shunjian Gate, as well as my father, might not let you off. Situ Muyang suddenly stared at Su-yi. His young face was full of wisdom as he said, But I am Situ, Liu Yun's son. You wanted to form an alliance with me because you wanted to find a scapegoat. Even if my father, the protector of the Shunjian Gate, wanted to punish you, you would have me as your scapegoat. Naturally, it would be much easier for you. Su-yi was stunned. Situ Muyang, this brat, was really a villain. Su-yi indeed wanted to form an alliance with Situ Muyang. If you don't want people to know, then don't do it. Everything he did was related to the Shunjian Gate. Su-yi had to think of a way out. After meeting Situ Muyang, Su-yi suddenly had a flash of inspiration. If he could get the son of the Shunjian Gate's head on the same boat, then he would be much more at ease. Hee, I won't hide it from you. That is indeed the case. Su-yi smiled embarrassedly. Then, he looked at Situ Muyang and said, Since we have formed an alliance, I will not treat you unfairly. When the time comes, there will be no shortage of benefits for you. If you are afraid, you can withdraw now. Anyway, you have already obtained the mystical spiritual fruit. You won't lose out. Why should I be afraid? Situ Muyang pursed his lips and raised his eyes. He said to Su-yi, I won't back out. If you want me to be your scapegoat, I'll naturally want a share of the benefits. However, I have one more condition. What condition? Su-yi asked. The great plundering was not done by you alone. I also had a share. We did it together. Situ Muyang said. Why? Su-yi could not figure out. Actually, it's nothing. Situ Muyang smiled and said to Su-yi. He said, My father has never believed me. Entering the battlefield of 10,000 swords, he warned me repeatedly. I wanted to show him that personal. I see. Although Su-yi didn't know if what Situ Muyang said was completely true, at least it shouldn't be too fake. This kid looked harmless to humans and animals, but there was a little devil hidden in his heart. However, this is not a great plundering. We're just keeping the interspatial bag for those disciples. Su-yi said to Situ Muyang. Keeping the interspatial bags, Situ Muyang smiled and said, Not bad, not bad. We know how to keep the interspatial bags for them. But those interspatial bags have been set up. It won't be easy to open them, right? Situ Muyang asked curiously. Everyone's interspatial bags had been set up. It was not easy to open them. If one forcefully opened them, everything in the interspatial bag would be destroyed. I have a little trick that can open the interspatial bags. Su Yi said. I see. Sita Muyang did not ask any more questions. He knew that Su Yi was very mysterious. It was acceptable that he had such a trick. Then, the two of them had to discuss what to do next. Both of them wanted to ascend the Lingjian Peak for the final battle of the Myriad Sword Conference, so they needed enough sword pattern stones. Moreover, the direct disciples outside were all looking for Su Yi. Some of them had even formed an alliance. Not only were they prepared, they were also taking the initiative to attack. Su Yi was afraid that once he showed up, he would be recognized by others. At that time, he would be surrounded. Not to mention how many Shanjian Gate disciples Su Yi had offended. Just the mystical spiritual fruit on Su Yi was enough to cause all the pro-disciples to dig 3 feet into the ground to find Su Yi. Once someone saw Su Yi, the consequences could be imagined. Su Yi knew this very well. No matter how strong he was, he could not fight against so many. Once so many pro-disciples form an alliance, he would not be able to deal with them. If he really controlled the army of barbaric beasts to attack, this matter would be completely blown out of proportion. Do you have any plans? Su Yi asked Sita Muyang. They want to deal with you, but now we are in the dark, and they are in the light. If we fight alone, we are not afraid of anyone. Sita Muyang pondered for a while, and then smiled mysteriously at Su Yi. What do you mean? Su Yi asked. Anyway, we originally wanted to borrow some sword pattern stones from the pro-disciples. Why don't we continue? We can borrow some sword pattern stones from the pro-disciples. This way, we will have enough sword pattern stones for the final battle of the Lingjian Peak. The corner of Situ Muyang's mouth curled into a smile. The battle on the spiritual sword peak, the most protected peak of the Myriad Sword Conference, had always been his goal. Moreover, his cultivation base had increased by 2 levels this time, which greatly boosted his confidence. Have a good night's rest. Tomorrow morning, we will borrow the sword pattern stones. Su Yi looked at Situ Muyang and smiled. There was indeed a little devil living in this guy's heart. After a while, the two of them adjusted their breathing to maintain their peak condition. They were prepared to borrow the sword pattern stones tomorrow. Premier 6-inch. The night was cold as water, and the bright moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight poured down, casting its radiance on the forest, the valley, and everywhere in the Myriad Sword battlefield. Search, continue searching. The mystical spiritual fruit is in Su Yi's hands. We must find him. He actually took all the mystical spiritual fruit by himself. That kid's appetite is really big. In the Myriad Sword battlefield, there were people everywhere looking for Su Yi. Su Yi, it's all Su Yi's fault. We must find that guy. All of the inner disciples were even more furious. So it turned out that the barbaric demonic beasts were actually controlled by Su Yi, who had robbed them clean. This enmity naturally had to be avenged. As long as they could find that brat, there would be a personal disciple to deal with him. The mountain peak towered into the clouds, and the moonlight poured down its radiance. A white elk, half the height of man, stood on a rock. Its body was elegant, and its whole body was shining. It was shrouded in the moonlight, and it emitted a glow. Find that young man for me. The elk opened its mouth and spoke in a clear voice. Oh! Suddenly, birds flapped their wings, and the roar of beasts was like thunder. It spread out from all directions, one after another, and did not calm down for a long time. The next day, the sun rose from the east, and the golden morning light shone down. The ancient enemies were all shrouded in the morning sun. The air was fresh, and the energy of heaven and earth was rich. Let's go and borrow the sword pattern stones. Chapter 485. Of these 2 youths, one was handsome and elegant, with a flawless appearance. The other was handsome and resolute, evil and extraordinary. How should we do it? Should we do it openly or secretly? Let's do it secretly. We have a higher chance of winning. Some of those personal disciples are very strong. We might not be able to deal with them easily. It's best if we do it secretly. We have to conserve our strength at all times. It's not good to fight head-on. Under the beautiful sunshine and the beautiful morning, these two extraordinary young men seemed to be discussing something important. In the entire battlefield of 10,000 swords, almost everyone was looking for Su-yi. He had plundered tens of thousands of inner disciples, and behind these inner disciples were all personal disciples. In addition, he had all the mystical spiritual fruits and probably a large number of sword pattern stones. This made Su-yi the target of everyone. It was a pity that no one had seen Su-yi. It was as if he had disappeared. This guy must have heard the news and hid himself. Coward! This guy must be so scared that he doesn't even dare to show his face. Dozens of young men and women walked past, cursing and gritting their teeth. After searching for so long, they couldn't even find Su-yi's shadow. The group walked further and further away, gradually disappearing from sight. They said, "You're a coward." In the lush canopy of a towering tree, Sitamyong looked at Su-yi with a mocking smile. "I can't be bothered with these guys. They have nothing on them. We're only looking for the personal disciples." Genuine C first K, first Su-yi didn't care. These inner disciples were good. The outer disciples had nothing on them, so he couldn't be bothered with them. What he wanted now was to look for the personal disciples. "Let's go." Sitamyong was excited and looked forward to it. The two silhouettes landed quietly. Their figures shuttled back and forth like ghosts, and then they disappeared. In a mountain forest, there was a group of extraordinary young men and women standing together. There were about 30 of them, and all of them had extraordinary auras. They all had the badges of Shanjian Gate's personal disciples. I don't believe that Su-yi will be able to escape. Although that Su-yi said that he defeated the 11th sword, but with so many of us, I don't believe that he is a match for us. It's better to be careful. It said that Su-yi is able to tame brute demon beasts. The group of personal disciples discussed in low voices, looking for Su-yi everywhere. Let the inner and outer disciples search for Su-yi. There's not much time left. We have to find more sword pattern stones as soon as possible. You should have a lot of sword vein stones on him. We can't place our hopes on Su-yi. If he doesn't appear, or if someone else gets there before us, we won't have enough sword pattern stones. There are already many people looking for the sword pattern stone. Once there is news about Su-yi, we will join forces to deal with him. You guys go and look for Su-yi first. Once there is news, inform me. Among the crowd, there was an extraordinary young man. He had an imposing appearance and a sharp aura. As soon as he finished speaking, he flew away. Whoosh, beside the young man, there was a young woman of similar age. She did not say a word. She just followed the young man with surging vitality under her feet. Senior brother Pu Hao and senior sister Pu Qingqing have left. They are the strongest among us. They are ranked in the top 50 of the Sword Pagoda. When they join forces, they're even more powerful. They should be the main force to deal with Su-yi. Don't worry. Senior brother Pu Hao and senior sister Pu Qingqing are only looking for the sword pattern stones alone. Once there is news about Su-yi, they will immediately join forces with us. A group of personal disciples muttered. Although there were many of them, they were still afraid of Su-yi. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Su-yi was now famous. Coupled with his ferocious style, they could not help but be afraid of him. Should we deal with this group, or the two that were left behind? In a corner far away, two youths were sneakily discussing how to deal with the two. The two that were left behind should be the strongest. They should have more sword pattern stones on them. Although the group of personal disciples are weaker, they have the advantage in numbers. Once we make a move, we will be exposed. So, let's deal with those two first. Su-yi pondered. Whoosh. Whoosh. Soon, the two youths quietly followed the Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing. Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing were not twins. However, they were only 1 year apart. Their cultivation and strength were outstanding among their peers. They were ranked in the top 50 of the Sword Pagoda. They were also famous in the Shinjin Gate. When the two of them joined forces, they were like tigers that had grown wings. The two of them were indeed very strong. Along the way, they were as fast as lightning. For hours later, They found a peak 3rd-level demon spirit realm barbaric beast and had a great battle with it. They even killed dozens of other barbaric beasts of different sizes. In the end, they heavily injured the peak 3rd-level demon spirit realm barbaric beast and obtained several sword pattern stones and 2 spiritual herbs. The 2 of them were very careful. Even though they were slightly injured and consumed a lot of energy, they still took some elixirs to recover. One of them was healing while the other was protecting them. Smart and careful. Why don't we make a move? Situmyong looked at the 2 personal disciples in front of him from afar. He lowered his voice and spoke in sign language. No, there are a lot of people nearby. If we make a move, we will be exposed. We have to endure it. He shook his head. He did not want to make a move. Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing rested for a while before continuing their journey. The 2 of them had been searching for sword pattern stones and barbaric beasts along the way. According to their experience, those barbaric beasts would have sword pattern stones on them. About 4 hours later, the siblings encountered another barbaric demonic beast. It was a 4th-level demon spirit realm barbaric beast. Its aura was powerful and hard to deal with. The 2 of them made a move. Their attacks were surging and thunderous. Illo bam, bam. It was an intense battle. The 2 of them worked together and used all their trump cards. The barbaric beast was also very powerful. It had fire and wood attributes, and its attacks were strange and violent. In the end, Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing used all their strength to attack and finally killed the barbaric beast. However, the 2 of them were also covered in wounds. Their injuries were not light, and they had consumed a lot of energy. After the 2 of them cut open the barbaric beast, several sword pattern stones appeared from its stomach. The materials from the barbaric beast were also treasures. The 2 of them cut them off and kept them in their interspatial pouches. Whoosh! Many figures appeared in the surroundings. The commotion caused by the battle had attracted many people nearby. What's wrong? Who wants to get a share? Come and try. Chapter 486. It's Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing. These 2 are not easy to deal with. There were many direct disciples nearby who were attracted by the commotion, but when they saw Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing, they hesitated for a moment and immediately left. Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing had a great reputation among their peers in the Xinjiang Gate and were feared by many. Looking at the surrounding figures leaving, the 2 siblings looked at each other. This was not a place to stay for long, so they immediately left, not daring to stay for long. A moment later, in a remote place, the 2 siblings' injuries were not light, and they were exhausted. There was no one to protect them, so they urgently needed to recover. After checking their surroundings, the 2 siblings each took an elixir and began to close their eyes to heal their injuries. One each, do it. A quarter of an hour later, 2 teenagers quietly appeared not far away from Pu Hao and his sister. Each of them held a square stone in their hands, which looked like a big brick. They directly smashed it towards the 2 siblings with all their might. The 2 siblings, who were sitting cross-legged, seemed to have noticed something at this moment. Immediately, their yuan qi swept out and condensed into a yuan qi shield. However, the 2 siblings' injuries were too serious, and they were exhausted. Their strength was limited, and with Su, Yi, and Situ Muyang's current strength, the result was obvious. Bang bang! The 2 bricks instantly pierced through the siblings' protective shields and solidly smashed into the back of their heads, causing them to bleed profusely. Ah! The 2 siblings screamed. Before they could recover, their vision turned black, and their minds went blank. They directly fainted. The 2 teenagers carefully walked out and checked the siblings' breathing. They're not dead, right? Don't hurt their lives. Situ Muyang muttered. This was the first time he had done something like this. He was nervous, excited, and a little excited. Don't worry, they just fainted. They won't die. After checking the siblings' condition, Su Yi immediately took the 2 siblings' space bags. Let's go. Then, the 2 teenagers hurriedly left, not staying for a second longer. So nervous, so exciting. When they wake up, they will probably go crazy. Haha. Sitimuyang couldn't help but be excited. He couldn't help but laugh when he thought of the siblings waking up and finding that everything they had painstakingly obtained was gone. Let's continue. This is just the beginning. There are many direct disciples. We have to hurry. Su-yi, on the other hand, was calm. During the 3 years in the barbarian demon forest, who knew how many times he had done this? Soon, another personal disciple fell into the two's target. A lone youth who wanted to relieve himself was irrigating and fertilizing a large tree. Suddenly, a sharp pain came from the back of his head. Then, many little stars appeared in front of his eyes. His body also collapsed to the ground. But the bricks flew all over the sky. Their targets were extremely accurate. They landed precisely on the backs of the heads of these personal disciples. One of the direct disciples reacted quickly and retreated quickly, avoiding a brick. "Get down!" A voice rang in the direct disciple's ears. A figure appeared behind him like a ghost and slammed a brick down. "Ah!" the direct disciple screamed. He turned around and saw a blurry figure behind him. Then, sparks appeared in front of his eyes, and he fainted. Night. The moon was dark, and the stars were bright. The forest was dark. Oh, from the depths of the mountain range, the roars of beasts could be heard. Ah! Screams of agony could be heard from all directions. Dawn. The morning light was gentle. Everything came back to life. In a hidden cave, Su-yi and Situ-muyang squatted on the ground. In front of them was a pile of miscellaneous items and space bags. A total of 86 bags. That's quite a harvest. Situ-muyang was a little excited. This was the harvest of a day and night. 86 space bags. There are a lot of direct disciples. We only knocked out 50 of them in a day and night. This is a difficult task. We have to work harder today. Su-yi was a little dissatisfied. There were so many direct disciples. At this speed, who knew how long it would take? Situ-muyang rolled his eyes at Su-yi. This guy was really greedy. He smiled and said, "Don't tell me you have a way to open these space bags. Let's see how many sword pattern stones there are. We need time to open the spatial bags." Not all of these personal disciples have sword pattern stones. I don't think they have many. We still need to work hard, Su-yi said. It said that there are only a few hundred sword pattern stones in the entire myriad sword battlefield. However, even if we divide them, we have to have at least 20 sword pattern stones each to have absolute confidence. Situ-muyang looked at Su-yi and said, "In short, the more sword pattern stones we have, the higher our chances." "Is that so?" Su-yi smiled. If he counted the sword pattern stones, it should be enough. However, to be safe, the more sword pattern stones he had, the better. Su-yi's real goal was only one of the sword pattern stones. The space bags of the direct disciples probably contained the real treasures. "Let's rest for a while and continue," Su-yi said. After a day and night, they needed to rest for a while before continuing. Have you heard? Many personal disciples were slapped unconscious, and the space bags on their bodies disappeared without a trace. I heard about it too. It said that Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing were attacked and knocked out. When they woke up, their space bags were gone. There are also many people who were attacked. The news that someone was ambushed and had his interspatial bag taken away spread like a storm. All the direct disciples were targeted. This made the direct disciples feel insecure. Those who heard the news did not dare to act alone. Who is it that dares to go around sneakily attacking personal disciples? This person must be very strong. Otherwise, how dare they attack the direct disciples? I heard that it might be several people. It doesn't seem like it was done by one person. There was a lot of discussion everywhere. The inner and outer disciples suddenly felt inexplicably happy. They had been robbed by Su-yi, but it seemed that the direct disciples had also suffered a heavy defeat in the myriad sword battlefield. If this news spread, they would not be too embarrassed in the future. If I find out who it is, Pu Hao, will not let them go. On the mountaintop, Pu Hao's aura was fierce. The back of his head was bandaged, and his black hair stood on end. He was extremely furious. The sword pattern stones and spiritual herbs that he had painstakingly found had been stolen. Chapter 487. How despicable and shameless. I don't care who it is, I will definitely tear him into pieces. Pu Qingqing's beautiful face was currently filled with rage. Her eyes were bloodshot as her anger soared to the heavens. Senior brother Pu Hao and senior sister Pu Qingqing are angry. It's better not to go near them. The surrounding disciples of the Xinjiang Gate did not dare to go near them, fearing that Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing would vent their anger on them. At this moment, the instigators, Su, Yi, and Sita Muyang, were once again searching for their targets. Although many of the personal disciples had received the news, there were still some who were alone. As long as there were not too many of them, Su, Yi, and Sita Muyang would be able to take them down. There were also some personal disciples who had not received the news. Suddenly, their vision turned black and they were knocked unconscious. Although the personal disciples were all very strong, in general, those who could enter the Sword Pagoda rankings were at least at the peak of level 3 Origin Spirit Realm. As for the other personal disciples, they were all between level 1 and level 3 Origin Spirit Realm. To the Su Yi of the past, these levels of cultivation were naturally extremely strong. But now, with Su Yi and Situ Muyang's cultivation and strength, as long as they were caught by surprise, they would not be able to escape. Although many of the personal disciples had already made preparations and were very careful, the small teams that did not have many people were still robbed by the Black Brick. Another day and night passed. In the hidden place, Su, Yi, and Situ Muyang counted the spatial bags. There were more than 300 spatial bags piled up in front of them. Compared to yesterday, there are twice as many. The results are not bad, but it's a pity that there are no particularly strong opponents. Sita Muyang was very happy, but he also felt a little regretful. With his experience, he knew that only the strongest direct disciples could have a sword pattern stone. There were many small teams. Although they were all personal disciples, the sword pattern stones were mostly given to the strongest personal disciples. The other personal disciples might not have any sword pattern stones. It's a lot more than yesterday. These spatial bags belong to direct disciples. As long as they belong to direct disciples, Su-Yi would not dislike them. In any case, what Su-Yi wanted was not just the sword pattern stone. The two of them continued to rest and recover their strength before continuing on their journey. Meanwhile, the battlefield of 10,000 swords was in an uproar. How audacious! So despicable and shameless. So unbridled. A lot of people have been tricked and slapped with a black brick. It's said that it's definitely not done by one person. They must have a team on the move, and every one of them is very strong. The personal disciples gathered closely together in case they encountered that brick-slapping fellow. They were on the brink of battle. No matter who it is, I won't let them off. I'll definitely kill that bastard. After those personal disciples who had been hit by the brick woke up, they were all furious. However, they could not find the culprit at all. They could only fly into a rage. Many of the personal disciples who had been hit by the brick also consciously formed teams to search for the culprit behind the scenes. Early in the morning, Su, Yi, and Sita Muyang continued on their journey. They were full of vigor. Although the direct disciples had made preparations, and there were many inner and outer disciples guarding the surroundings, with Su, Yi, and Sita Muyang's cultivation and strength, coupled with the fact that both of them possessed the wind attribute, they had an advantage in speed. Ordinary people would not be able to detect the two of them. Not long after, miserable screams came from the depths of the battlefield of 10,000 swords. Bricks appeared everywhere, and it was impossible to guard against them. Originally, everyone had already reached the depths of the battlefield of 10,000 swords, and this area was not big. Many personal disciples had already been hit by the black bricks. On this day, everyone was in a state of panic. Miserable screams came from everywhere, attracting a large number of personal disciples to search everywhere, but they found nothing. At night, the moonlight shrouded this ancient mountain forest. The forest valley was so quiet that it was as if everything was sleeping. Occasionally, there would be the roars of beasts and the swaying shadows of the tree branches under the moonlight, causing people to hallucinate. Ancient trees towered into the sky, covering the sky and the moon. In the dark, it looked gloomy and terrifying, mysterious and unfathomable. This ancient land had always been isolated from the rest of the world. There were all kinds of dangers inside, such as savage beasts, swamps, and so on. People had no choice but to be careful. Under the moonlight, the deep forest was even darker. The tall, towering trees blocked most of the moonlight, and only the mottled moonlight shone in through the branches and leaves of the trees, adding a sense of mystery and strangeness. In the dark forest, the towering trees were strong and sturdy, and the air was filled with an erratic fog. The surroundings were strangely quiet. Beside a towering tree, there was a figure sitting cross-legged. His body was shrouded in light, and his aura was powerful. This figure looked very young, about 20 years old. He wore a green battle robe, and his black hair was tied behind his head. His face was handsome, and his eyes were slightly closed. His body was fluctuating with a green light. Swoosh, swoosh. In the distance, there were two youths crouching in the branches of the tree crown. Through the gaps of the leaves, they sized up the figure in the distance. He's alone, and he doesn't seem to be on guard, Situmuyang said. His black clothes were even more hidden in the forest under the moonlight, but his clear eyes were shining. Something's not right. Suyi's eyes moved, his gaze deep. What's wrong? He's alone. Just follow the old rules. Situmuyang asked. That guy is a personal disciple, and his aura is very strong. He's not weak, but he's completely unguarded. That's strange. The corners of Su Yi's mouth curled into a smile. This was the myriad sword battlefield. From a faintly discernible aura emanating from the direct disciple in the distance. His cultivation was extraordinary. However, it was precisely because of this that Su Yi felt strange. In this battlefield of 10,000 swords that was full of danger, no one dared to be careless. Personal disciples were not ordinary, so it was impossible for them not to have thought of this. There was only one reason for this person to be so careless, and that was to do it on purpose. You're saying that that guy was careless on purpose? Then, Situmuyang understood immediately. His eyes moved, and he asked Su Yi, do you think that guy was waiting for us on purpose? It's possible. Su Yi smiled faintly. That fellow had purposely exposed himself. Naturally, he was purposely attracting someone to approach him. It was very likely that he was trying to attract him and Situmuyang, who had been out and about for the past 2 days. That guy is alone. Even if he's on guard, what could he do? There are two of us. Situmuyang saw through the clues, and he was even more unconcerned. Chapter 488. Updates say fastest / on e-network see moreover. Situmuyang also knew that Su Yi, this terrifying guy, was by his side. Su Yi was a true pervert. We have to be careful. I'm afraid this is a trap within a trap. Su Yi pouted and observed the surroundings. He was not afraid of this guy deliberately exposing himself, but he was afraid that this was a trap within a trap. He was afraid that there were more experts hidden in the surroundings. Then what should we do? That guy should be very strong. He must have a sword pattern stone on him. Situmuyang rubbed his palms together. He could feel the aura of the youth in front of him. He seemed to be the strongest personal disciple he had encountered in the past few days. Such a personal disciple must have a sword pattern stone on him. The chances of this being a trap within a trap are not high. We can take the risk and try. Su Yi's eyes flashed. Those who could threaten his personal disciples should have reached the level of Sword 11. But for those who could reach Sword 11's level, those personal disciples were all talented and had their own personalities. The possibility of them joining forces was not high. As for the other personal disciples joining forces, they would at most expose themselves. There would not be any real danger. That guy seems to be prepared. How should we attack? Situmuyang had a smile in his eyes. Under Su Yi's guidance, he had learned very quickly. He would only attack when he was ready, aiming to hit the target in one strike. He's prepared. Then we'll use the second plan. We'll beat him at his own game. Su Yi said. The towering tree was strong and sturdy. Zhang Lingyun, who was wearing a blue battle robe, was sitting cross-legged. Aside from the aura fluctuations around her, everything was silent. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. Suddenly, the young man opened his eyes and swept his gaze across the area in front of him without leaving a trace. There was a vigorous aura there. It had already appeared in the range of his spiritual perception. It's finally here, Zhang Lingyun murmured in her heart. She closed her eyes again. Her body was motionless, as if she was defenseless. After a few breaths, there was an almost imperceptible aura fluctuation in the forest not far away. Immediately, a black figure flashed out. A ray of light suddenly burst out, carrying a powerful aura. It was like an arrow, smashing towards the forehead of Zhang Lingyun, who was sitting cross-legged. The speed was too fast. There was something like an arrow arriving in an instant. Boom! At the same time, just as that thing was approaching, a powerful green yuan qi suddenly burst out from Zhang Lingyun's body, turning into a yuan qi protective light barrier that surrounded her body. At the same time, her figure directly leapt out and punched out. Bang! With a low muffled sound, something exploded in front of Zhang Lingyun. A square stone turned into fine powder. Whoosh! At that instant, a figure appeared beside Zhang Lingyun like a phantom, and threw a black brick at her. There's another one. Zhang Lingyun was shocked. He was completely unprepared for this second person, and did not detect him at all. His gaze darkened, but his hands did not stop moving. As his figure rapidly retreated, strands of yuan qi flowed out from his body, like a flood flowing through his meridians. A finger imprint shot out, covered in a green light, and welcomed the attack in a flash. Chila! The fingerprint collided with the black brick. Light erupted, and the black brick cracked and shattered. Finally, the fingerprint collided with the palm. At this moment, above the palm, a red light covered the palm. Yuan qi, with a blazing aura, instantly flowed and collided with the fingerprint. As soon as they made contact, the two figures staggered back at the same time. Su Yi's figure retreated a few steps before stabilizing his body. His eyes were secretly surprised. This person was much stronger than he had imagined. Zhang Lingyun's footsteps staggered. Compared to Su Yi, she retreated 2 more steps. Her expression also changed in an instant. The person who launched the sneak attack seemed to be stronger than she had imagined. So, Situ Liuyun's figure appeared, facing Su Yi on the left and right. His young face had an aged look. Situ Muyang could see the strength of this green-robed youth. At this moment, he did not dare to be careless. You are Su Yi. Zhang Lingyun looked at Su Yi and Situ Muyang. She seemed surprised. When she saw Su Yi's attire, her expression changed. It was unknown whether it was excitement, shock, expectation, or surprise. I'm Su Yi, and I'm Su Yi. Su Yi curled his lips. He guessed that his attire was too easy to recognize. However, there was no other way. The heavy sword on his back had a tempering effect on him. Only by persevering would he be able to achieve greater results. At this moment, Su Yi was also sizing up the youth in front of him. He was a direct disciple of Shunjian Gate. His aura was strong, and he had an elegant demeanor. Su Yi sighed inwardly. This Shunjian Gate was indeed worthy of being a first-rate force. The disciples in the gate were all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Zhang Lingyun smiled. Her handsome face revealed a smile. She looked at Su Yi and Situ Muyang and said, "The mystical spirit fruit is on your body. These days, you've been throwing black bricks everywhere. You should have a lot of sword vein stones." "What are you talking about?" "I don't know." Su Yi shook his head. Naturally, he would not admit it. "You purposely expose yourself here. Are you trying to trick us?" "Unfortunately, you're not strong enough," Situ Muyang said, sizing up Zhang Lingyun. He was not careless, but he was not afraid either. He was confident. "You don't want to admit it." "It's okay, we'll know soon." Zhang Lingyun looked at Su Yi, then at Situ Muyang and said, "I have to say, you guys are indeed strong and capable. No wonder you're so arrogant. However, I hope you can still be so arrogant in a while." As for Zhang Lingyun, she was naturally certain that the mystical spiritual fruit was with Su Yi. Zhang Lingyun looked at the two youths in front of her. They were not old. Su Yi was able to defeat the 11th sword, which proved his strength. The black-robed youth seemed to be even younger. Judging from the strength of his sneak attack, his cultivation was not bad. Zhang Lingyun had heard about what these two had done in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. It was enough to prove that these two youths were really capable. This made Zhang Lingyun not underestimate Su Yi and Sita Muyang. "You're quite arrogant. Tell me your name." Hearing Zhang Lingyun's tone, Sita Muyang was unhappy. This guy seemed to be very arrogant. "Remember, Zhang Lingyun, everything you've done in the Myriad Sword Conference will end in my hands," Zhang Lingyun said, a light flashing in her eyes. Once she defeated Su Yi, everything that these two youths had obtained would fall into her hands. That would be a great deal. Zhang Lingyun, the one ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda. Chapter 489. "That's right, it's me." Zhang Lingyun shrugged and said indifferently. His expression was calm and confident. Although he knew that Su Yi was extraordinary and that this black-robed youth was also very strong, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was not too nervous. Thinking that everything from these two youths would fall into his hands, Zhang Lingyun could not help but feel a surge in his heart. He had heard that Su Yi had plundered tens of thousands of inner sect disciples and even had all the mystical spiritual fruits on him. In addition to that, he had plundered so many personal disciples recently. What a huge haul that was. Ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, hearing this, Su Yi's brows twitched. So this guy was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, 6 places higher than 11th Sword. No wonder he had such strength and dared to deliberately attract them here. "I'll give you 2 choices. Hand over half of your gains, and I won't make things difficult for you, and let you go. Otherwise, I'll have to do it myself." Seeing the changes in Su Yi and Sita Muyang's expressions, Zhang Lingyun thought that these two youths were afraid of him. If he could win without a fight and take half of the gains, it would be good enough. After all, Su Yi was not ordinary. If he wanted to win, he might have to fight a tough battle. At that time, he would be able to take everything, but he would also become a target for everyone in the end. Zhang Lingyun was not stupid. He knew what was best for him. "Do you have a cold or a fever?" Sita Muyang looked at Zhang Lingyun and asked seriously. "No." Zhang Lingyun was slightly stunned. How can a martial practitioner catch a cold and have a fever? If you don't have a fever, why would you say such a thing? I thought you had a fever and turned you into an idiot. Sita Muyang rolled his eyes at Zhang Lingyun. So what if he was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda? He was now at the 4th level of Origin Spirit stage. "Kid, tell me your name and which sword peak you're from." Zhang Lingyun's face instantly darkened as he stared coldly at Sita Muyang. This kid actually dared to play tricks on him. Among the personal disciples of this generation in Xinjiang Gate, no one dared to be so arrogant in front of him. Chi. Suddenly, at this moment, Su Yi moved. His silhouette was like lightning, leaving behind a series of afterimages as he dashed towards Zhang Lingyun. He punched out with his fist, blazing yuan chi covering his fist. Sneak attack. Zhang Lingyun was a little startled. She didn't expect Su Yi to launch a sneak attack. In her mind, Su Yi was young, but his strength was outstanding. Such a person shouldn't launch a sneak attack. But in the next instant, Zhang Lingyun made her move. Yuan Qi covered her body, and in an instant, the two figures collided. Bang! Yuan Qi erupted, emitting a muffled sound that spread out in all directions. As the Yuan Qi collided, strong Yuan Qi astral winds swept out, shattering all the fallen leaves on the ground into powder. The ground also trembled. "Remember, my name is Sita Muyang." Sita Muyang made his move as well. Yuan Qi covered his body. His attacks were like Mount Tai as they surrounded and attacked Zhang Lingyun. Zhang Lingyun's face darkened as she felt the aura behind her. Her feet immediately changed as she took a profound step forward, her left arm spinning as she sent out a palm strike. Bang! Yuan Qi astral winds swept out, causing Zhang Lingyun's body to tremble slightly as she was forced to retreat several steps. Stomp, stomp. Situ Muyang staggered backwards. But in just 2 steps, the Yuan Qi on his body turned into wind attribute. Yuan Qi surged beneath his feet, causing his body to become like a leaf blown by a gentle breeze. After taking 2 steps back, he was able to stabilize his retreat. So strong, 5th level origin spirit stage. Sita Muyang looked at Zhang Lingyun with some shock in his eyes. The cultivation of this fellow before him had definitely reached 5th level origin spirit stage. Chi. Su-yi arrived once again as he sent out a punch. Fire attribute Yuan Qi surged, as if a flame was about to spread out from the front of the palm. The scorching aura dyed the surrounding air as if it was about to ignite, causing one's skin to burn and one's hair to stand on end. Just as Zhang Lingyun stabilized her retreat, the tip of her foot suddenly pushed off the ground as her body leapt forward, actually dodging Su-yi's punch. At the same time, Zhang Lingyun instantly closed in. Her green battle robes shook as strange wood attribute Yuan Qi appeared. Hand seals formed in her hands as would attribute Yuan Qi swirled around her body like a vortex. Numerous palm imprints appeared on her right hand before they noiselessly enveloped Su-yi. It was a very strange sight. Su-yi was also somewhat astonished. This attack was very strange, and he had never seen such a strange martial technique. Yuan Qi surged as Su-yi made his move. Palm imprint after palm imprint instantly collided. Bang, bang, bang. Muffled sounds immediately rang out as Yuan Qi astral winds exploded and attribute lights erupted. Craftsman, Net C. Su-yi blocked all the palm imprints with absolute Yuan Qi. However, the wood attribute Yuan Qi that rushed out seemed to be able to penetrate Su-yi's Yuan Qi light shield, causing Su-yi to be greatly affected. If not for Su-yi's diamond body, the impact would have been quite severe. Inwardly surprised, Su-yi knew that Zhang Lingyun was definitely capable to be ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda. If not for his diamond body, he would have been greatly affected. Moreover, although they had only exchanged a few blows, Su-yi already knew that Zhang Lingyun possessed the wood attribute. Her attacks were agile and unpredictable, making her extremely difficult to deal with. Boom! When Situ Muyang reappeared, he was already hovering in the air, along with a bright white light. The blazing light spread out and covered a set of bright white armor that looked like it was covered with feathers. The armor glowed, giving off an ancient aura. A pair of white wings flapped agilely as they spread out. The edges of the wings were like blades, giving off a cold glint as they swooped down towards Zhang Lingyun, causing an indescribable energy to appear in the surroundings. Gales howled as they enveloped Zhang Lingyun. 4th level origin spirit stage, armor treasure. Zhang Lingyun, who had just retreated after exchanging a blow with Su-yi, sensed the aura swooping down from behind her, and her expression instantly changed. The armor with an ancient aura was suffused with a pressure. At this moment, the aura from the youth's body had also reached the 4th level of the origin spirit stage, complementing the armor treasure. Boom! In this instant, Zhang Lingyun no longer held back, as all the Yuan Qi in her body gushed out like a flood. Her cultivation aura climbed to the peak, the aura of the 5th level of the origin spirit stage, shaking the surroundings. Voila! Wood attribute Yuan Qi exploded as green light intertwined, colliding with the incoming attack. Under the 2 powerful auras, the surrounding space trembled as sand and pebbles flew everywhere. Dead branches and leaves turned to dust, while twisted tree branches snapped, destroying everything in their path. 5th level origin spirit stage, huh? Who's afraid of who? Sita Muyang was not surprised that Zhang Lingyun was at the 5th level of the origin spirit stage, as he had long sensed it. Chapter 490. Wang. Zhang Lingyun at the 5th level of origin spirit realm was definitely not easy to deal with. She gripped tightly onto an extraordinary sword in her hand. It was agile and simple, with sword runes flowing and glistening. It was definitely an extraordinary level. Sword light spread out, slicing through the air with unfathomable sharpness. With the assistance of the Wind Rider battlesuit, Situmyang's speed was like a tiger that had grown wings. He was like an eagle hunting its prey, constantly pouncing on his prey. Su Yi's eyes moved. He had a rough idea of Zhang Lingyun's strength. Therefore, Su Yi sighed in his heart. Zhang Lingyun's age was estimated to be around 21 or 22 years old, but she had already reached the 5th level of Origin Spirit Realm. Su Yi remembered that in the barbaric demon forest, those mercenary groups and Black Fiend sect disciples who could reach this level of cultivation were already in their middle ages. At the very least, they were nearing their 40s. Even those Origin Spirit Realm disciples that Sacred Mountain Wangshuanda had brought over were at least 28 or 29 years old. Those disciples were probably not core disciples of the Sacred Mountain. However, this also proved that Zhang Lingyun's talent was definitely at the level of a genius. Bang, bang, bang. Metallic clangs rang out as Yuan Qi astral winds erupted. Zhang Lingyun and Sita Muyang continued to exchange blows. Muffled Yuan Qi sounds rang out continuously. However, neither of them seemed to have much of an advantage over the other. Sita Muyang's speed was astonishing. His attacks were fierce and violent, causing Zhang Lingyun's clothes to flutter and her hair to become disheveled. Zhang Lingyun's sword light cut through the air, bringing with it the sound of wind breaking. The sword light was strange and sharp, causing Situ Muyang to feel a chill on his skin even through the Wind Rider battlesuit. Continue. Su Yi joined the battle, the saber on his back unsheathed. The saber light was like lightning, constantly striking out. Situ Muyang did not use any weapons, but the Wind Rider battlesuit on his body was what he relied on. Under the cover of Yuan Qi, his surroundings seemed to be covered by a violent gale. His figure moved, crisscrossing like a moving tornado, giving off an extremely eye-catching visual impact. Zhang Lingyun's swordsmanship was very sharp, mixed with strangeness and agility. It was continuous and very difficult to execute. Su Yi could sense that this Zhang Lingyun was very strong. At the 5th level of the Origin Spirit stage, her battle prowess was outstanding, and the Yuan Qi within her body seemed to continuously surge out. The more Su Yi fought, the more comfortable he felt. Of course, Su Yi did not use his full strength. Since his identity had already been exposed, if he were to reveal his full strength, Su Yi knew that it would be extremely disadvantageous for him in a situation where all the Shunjian Gate disciples were his enemies. Su Yi also did not want to be entangled for too long. This would cause a huge commotion and alert the nearby Shunjian Gate's direct disciples. Right now, all of the Shunjian Gate disciples in the myriad sword battlefield were looking for him. The battle between the 3 of them soon reached its climax. It was very intense. If there were others present, they would definitely cry out in surprise. These 3 people were all extraordinary. Zhang Lingyun became more and more surprised. She was forced to use her full strength, but she found it more and more strenuous. The wounds on her body also increased, and her injuries became more and more serious. After a quarter of an hour, although Zhang Lingyun's strength and battle prowess were strong, Su Yi had a thorough understanding of her true strength. It's about time, Su Yi muttered in his heart. It was about time to end everything. Xiao, the sound of metal clashing resounded. Su Yi activated a saber art in his hand. In an instant, the saber seemed to resound with the faint roar of a dragon, like wind and thunder. The saber light was resplendent, and with an incomparably ferocious stance, it directly chopped down. The saber was like a wild dragon, and the momentum was like a fierce tiger. This was the first move of the wild dragon's 3 sabers, Furious Dragon Slash. Zhang Lingyun was shocked. Her sword light swept out, and the Yuan Qi in her body surged. Qi-la, ka-ka. The saber and sword collided, and the metal clashed. Sparks flew in all directions. Following a ka-cha sound, the saber in Su Yi's hand was filled with flames and immediately cracked. But the saber did not break, only a gap appeared. It was obvious that Zhang Lingyun's sword had a lot of advantages, and its level was far superior to the saber in Su Yi's hand. But Su Yi had the support of powerful Yuan Qi, and Zhang Lingyun did not have the advantage. The sword in her hand hummed like wind and thunder, and with a sonorous sound, she staggered back and was forced to retreat. Qila, a red light flashed in his eyes. Su Yi's feet surged with Yuan Qi, and his figure was like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, he appeared in front of Zhang Lingyun, who was forced to retreat and struck out with a palm. Boom! A wave of fire attribute Yuan Qi surged, and from Su Yi's palm print, it was as if an open flame was about to spread out. The blazing aura made the surrounding air seem as if it was about to ignite. How did you suddenly become so much stronger? Zhang Lingyun was surprised. The aura on Su Yi's body seemed to have suddenly become much stronger. He had endured for so long, waiting for a sudden eruption. Boom! In an instant, Zhang Lingyun's wood attribute Yuan Qi was exposed, forming a Yuan Qi halo that enveloped her whole body. In a panic, her left arm shook, and a green light lingered on her palm to meet the attack. Everything was within Su Yi's expectations. The corners of his mouth lifted into a faint smile. The two palms collided, and he murmured, "Explode." Pong! The two palms collided, and there was an explosion of energy between the two palms. But suddenly, there was a muffled explosion. First to send. From the center of her palm, it seemed as if a huge wave of hot air was contained within it. It compressed, then expanded and exploded like a bomb. Rumble! The explosion was like thunder, and an aura like a small volcanic eruption erupted. The airflow was like a small tornado surging. Dang dang! Zhang Lingyun's body was suddenly forced back, and her Yuan Qi halo was shattered. The ground beneath her feet cracked, and a muffled sound came from her throat. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Qi! Sita Muyang made his move. Taking advantage of Zhang Lingyun's setback, his figure closed in. His finger was like lightning, crafty and ingenious, and instantly swept towards the former's back. Zhang Lingyun felt the attack coming from behind, but it was too late to dodge. She hurriedly dodged, and the finger marks swept out from her shoulder. Immediately, a bloody hole appeared, and blood spurted out. In this kind of battle, victory and defeat could be decided in an instant. Not to mention, there was still Su Yi secretly suppressing her. Su Yi made his move again. Yuan Qi swept out from the soles of his feet. His figure was like a ghost, and his fist was clenched. He didn't use any martial technique, but his fist was not fancy at all. It carried the power condensed from vigorous Yuan Qi and fiercely landed on Zhang Lingyun's body. Su Yi's fist contained Yuan Qi that seemed to disperse the ripples in the air. Accompanied by a whooshing sound, it instantly hit Zhang Lingyun, who was unable to dodge. Pung! Pooh! With a muffled sound, Zhang Lingyun spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Zhang Lingyun smashed to the ground, and the ground trembled. Her face was as pale as ash, and the sword in her hand also fell out of her hand. Boom! Zhang Lingyun struggled, and her eyes were filled with shock. Suddenly, a powerful force collapsed and suppressed her. Chapter 491. However, Su Yi reluctantly gave up his sword. For the disciples of the Xinjiang Gate, their swords were their lives, so they couldn't be too ruthless. Looking at the backs of the two youths, Zhang Lingyun was still in a daze for a long time. He had actually lost, and lost so thoroughly. Just like the others, he had been robbed of everything. Swoosh, swoosh. Not long after, figures appeared in the surroundings. Many disciples of the Xinjiang Gate had arrived. Look at the original chapter VA square root. It's senior brother Zhang Lingyun. What happened to senior brother Lingyun? He seems to have suffered a serious injury. The disciples of the Xinjiang Gate who had arrived saw Zhang Lingyun in such a sorry state, and their expressions changed greatly. With Zhang Lingyun's cultivation and strength, he actually suffered such a serious injury. How tyrannical was his opponent? Swoosh! Many figures flew over, and a vigorous aura fluctuated. Soon, more than 10 figures arrived, and their aura made the surrounding disciples of the Shunjian Gate secretly tremble. It's senior brother Yunling Feng. He's here. When they saw one of the people who had arrived, the surrounding disciples of the Shunjian Gate had their expressions changed greatly. Their gazes were filled with awe, yearning, and shock. In front of these 10 figures, the leading figure of a young man was like an afterimage as he went straight to Zhang Lingyun's side. The young man wasn't old, and he had a straight nose and red lips. His white clothes set off his tall and slender figure. His figure looked thin, but he wasn't weak. On his handsome but indifferent face, his black eyes looked around for a while, and then fell on Zhang Lingyun. He said in a flat voice, "It seems like there are two people. Who is it that even you fell for?" Zhang Lingyun's sword was inserted into the storefront, and she stood upright. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth, and her hair was messy. She looked at Yunling Feng and hesitated for a moment. She raised her hand and rolled up her sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth, and said, "Su Yi and Situ Muyang. They were the ones who threw the black brick." Chase. Hearing this, Yunling Feng's long eyelashes revealed a solemn expression in his dazzling black eyes. His eyebrows moved slightly, and he waved his hand to the dozen or so young men and women accompanying him. His voice was calm and indifferent as he said, "Chase." As soon as he finished speaking, Yunling Feng was the first to leave. Behind him, the auras of a dozen figures surged, and they quickly followed him. Su Yi. The person who threw the black brick is Su Yi. I knew it was that little bastard. Other than him, there's no one else. Who is that Sitamuyang? I don't think I've heard of him before. Su Yi, is that guy so strong? He actually defeated senior brother Zhang Lingyun. This is too terrifying. It's just the two of them working together. In a one-on-one fight, there won't be a match for senior Zhang Lingyun. Senior brother Yunling Feng has made his move. This time, Su Yi will definitely be in big trouble. The whole place was in an uproar, and the news quickly spread. Among the disciples of Xinjiang Gate, it seemed that not many people were surprised that the person behind the black brick was Su Yi. However, everyone was shocked by the robbery of Zhang Lingyun. Su Yi defeated Zhang Lingyun. Although he worked together with others, it was enough to shock people. In a secluded place, there were rocks everywhere, and fog pervaded the air. There are many personal disciples around. They probably thought that we would run away, but we didn't. Let them slowly search for us. Su Yi leaned against a huge rock, with one hand behind his head and the other hand gently swinging a few space bags. His eyes were smiling. These space bags were obtained from Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda. Su Yi guessed that there must be a lot of good things in the space bags. The more dangerous a place is, the safer it is. Hee. Situ Muyang smiled faintly. His face was very pale, and he put away the Imperial Wind battle armor. His body was in a sorry state. He didn't gain any advantage in the battle with Zhang Lingyun. Let's rest for a while. We'll leave after those people leave. Su Yi got up, sat cross-legged, and put away the space bags in his arms. Situ Muyang stuffed a healing elixir into his mouth and sat cross-legged on the ground. Then he looked at Su Yi and slightly rolled his eyes at Su. With your strength, you should have taken down Zhang Lingyun long ago. Why did you waste so much effort? Situ Muyang had a rough idea of Su Yi's strength. He felt that Su Yi's strength had obviously increased compared to the last time they fought. It wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Zhang Lingyun, but he had been holding back. If we expose our strength too early, people will be prepared in advance. It would do us more harm than good. Su Yi smiled. It was definitely not a good thing to expose one's strength too early. Situ Muyang felt helpless. Su Yi was simply scheming against others all the time. Situ Muyang's injuries were quite serious, and his strength was almost exhausted. He was too lazy to pay attention to Su Yi. He began to circulate his energy to refine the elixir and adjust his breathing. After exchanging blows with Zhang Lingyun this time, Situ Muyang's heart was filled with emotions. There were indeed some valiant people in the Divine Sword sect. If it wasn't for the fact that he had recently consumed the elixir that increased his cultivation by 2 levels, the outcome would not have been like this if he had encountered Zhang Lingyun. It's really that Su Yi. It's Su Yi and Sitamuyang. Those two are the ones who throw black bricks everywhere. They're too hateful. Senior brother Zhang Lingyun was also defeated. Have Su Yi and Sitamuyang become so powerful? I heard that senior brother Zhang Lingyun has already stepped into level 5 Origin Spirit stage. When the news of Zhang Lingyun's defeat and looting spread, it shocked everyone. Under the moonlight, Su Yi and Sitamuyang were adjusting their breathing between giant rocks in a hidden place. Su Yi was still all right. He was only slightly exhausted and didn't have any injuries. However, Sitamuyang's injuries weren't light. In his fight with Zhang Lingyun, he didn't gain any advantage. Several hours later, dawn had already arrived, but Sitamuyang was still adjusting his breathing. His injuries weren't light. Several hours later, Sitamuyang consumed a healing elixir, but he didn't recover much. However, his deathly pale complexion had already regained some color and was no longer as pale as before. From this, one could tell that the martial art he cultivated wasn't ordinary. Before dawn, the sky was dark and not a sound could be heard. Chila, a beast silhouette, stealthily pierced through the air. Without much noise, it swooped down towards Su Yi. Its sharp claws were extended, emitting a cold glint, while a powerful storm of aura instantly erupted. At this moment, Su Yi, whose eyes were tightly shut, suddenly opened them. At the same time, a surge of blazing yuan qi gushed out from his body like a flood. Leaping forward, a fist covered in yuan qi rushed out. Bang! Chapter 492. Screech. A blood-curdling shriek was heard. The huge body of the flying beast was like a bird with broken wings as it was sent flying. It landed heavily on a pile of boulders dozens of feet away, shattering many of the boulders into rubble and dust. Roar! A brute demon beast quietly appeared not far away. It wasn't very big, only about 5 feet tall. It had a humanoid form, but its head was like a wolf or an ape. Its entire body was covered in black scales, as if it was forged from black iron. It emitted a faint and deep light. When such a brute demon beast appeared, it emitted a mountain-like aura. Its aura was astonishing, and its roar was like thunder. It directly charged out, and its humanoid palm-like claws grabbed towards Su Yi. Su Yi's gaze sank. This barbaric beast's aura wasn't weak. It's actually at the 5th level of the demon spirit realm. It's pretty powerful. Beast. Instead of advancing, Su Yi retreated and punched out again. Simple and direct, it collided with the claw head-on. Boom! Roar! A muffled sound was heard, followed by a shriek. The barbaric beast spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Its sharp claws were dripping with blood as it smashed onto the ground, shattering the boulders and turning them into dust. Roar! In an instant, the roars of many barbaric beasts could be heard. Screech! Under the dusky dawn sky, a large number of ferocious beasts could be seen flapping their wings as they covered the sky. Not good. There's so many barbaric beasts. Sitamuyang was already awakened. He immediately leaped to Su Yi's side. Be careful. We're in trouble. Su Yi's gaze darkened. He had already sensed the arrival of many barbaric beasts, causing the forest to tremble and the ground to tremble. Roar! Soon, pairs of blood-red eyes appeared on the surrounding boulders. They were flickering with ominous glints as they let out deafening roars. In the sky, the ferocious beasts flapped their wings as they circled around, emitting a ferocious aura. The barbaric beasts had formed an army of barbaric beasts, surrounding the area tightly. Many of them had powerful auras. Gravel shot out from all directions, and dust flew into the air. Waves of air swept past like a gale. A giant wolf raised its head and roared. Its entire body was snow white, and its aura had reached the demon true realm. There was a ferocious bird that was only about 3 meters in size. Its feathers were as sharp as blades, and its claws were sharp. Its body was suffused with the aura of the demon true realm, and there were many ferocious birds around it. There were also plenty of demon spirit realm barbaric beasts in the air and on the ground. Their auras were ferocious, and their ferocious eyes were frightening. Why are there so many barbaric beasts? This is going to be troublesome. Situ Muyang's expression was grave as he sensed the aura of the barbaric beasts around them. He knew that they were in deep trouble. Goo! In the sky, the ferocious bird with blade-like feathers had a cold glint in its eyes. It flapped its wings and emitted a clanging sound. Rays of light shot out as it pounced towards Su Yi and Situ Muyang. The aura of the demon true realm swept out, bringing about a storm. Illo, the snow-white giant wolf, wasn't willing to be left behind. It unleashed a terrifying aura that shook the surrounding space as it pounced towards Su Yi and Situ Muyang. Let's go all out and act according to the situation. Situ Muyang yelled as he activated the Imperial Wind battlesuit to defend himself. Su Yi's expression changed. Without any hesitation, he circulated the Origin Supreme technique, and a destructive and majestic aura burst out. He unsheathed the saber on his back and executed the third move of the Mad Dragon Triblade, the Mad Dragon Overlord Slash. A ray of saber light shot out with a long trail of scarlet lightning. A scarlet aura swept out and covered the sky. Illo, there seemed to be a faint shadow of a scarlet dragon in the saber light, causing the surrounding ground to crack and explode. Huge rocks were turned into dust as a terrifying aura spread out. At this moment, the snow-white giant wolf seemed to have sensed an aura that it feared the most. Its ferocious eyes were filled with horror as its aura was greatly affected. Chila. When the saber light collided, the snow-white giant wolf and Su Yi's saber collided as their sharp claws swept out. Su Yi's body was pushed back, and so was the snow-white giant wolf. There were shallow scratches on its sharp claws, and its eyes were filled with shock. Ding ding. Su Yi kept retreating as the blood and qi in his body churned. Blood and qi fluctuated in his throat with a hint of sweetness. Su Yi forcefully swallowed a mouthful of blood as his expression turned grave. This snow-white giant wolf of the demon true realm was too powerful. Chi-la-la. At the same time, Situ Muyang and the ferocious bird had already collided. The wind howled and swept out in all directions. Puff! Situ Muyang fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Yi stomped his foot on the ground as the Origin Supreme technique was fully activated, releasing a majestic and destructive aura. Illo. At this moment, all the barbaric beasts in the air started to roar. Their roars shook the sky and they started to tremble. The two strongest snow-white giant wolf and the ferocious bird were also shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear as they stared at Su Yi, not daring to move forward. Voila! At that moment, a ray of light came down from the sky and a mysterious aura spread out. This aura seemed to be able to resist some of the barbarian beasts within a certain range. Now that Su Yi was using the Origin Supreme technique, some of the barbarian beasts felt less suppressed. Su Yi immediately sensed this aura and looked over. Above the sky, a ray of light spread out. Under Su Yi's astonished gaze, a white elk that was half the height of a human slowly descended. It stood on a rock with an elegant figure. Its entire body was emitting a luster as the ray of light fluctuated. What a strange human. You're obviously human, but your aura seems to be closely related to the demon race. The elk opened its mouth and spoke in human language. Its voice was crisp, lively, and proud. Its eyes were shining with 5 colors. Demon illusionary realm. When the elk spoke in human language, Su Yi and Situ Muyang, who was struggling to get up, couldn't help but tremble. To speak in human language, this was a barbarian beast that had reached the demon illusionary realm. Su Yi's expression turned serious. The Origin Supreme Technique's aura didn't seem to be able to suppress a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast. There was actually a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast in the Myriad Sword battlefield. I know. This should be the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield. Sita Muyang whispered to Sui. There's a guardian in the Myriad Sword battlefield? Sui raised his eyebrows. No one had ever told him about this before. There was actually a guardian in the Myriad Sword battlefield, and it was even a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast. #W I heard about it too. There aren't any experts from the Shenjian Gate in the Myriad Sword battlefield. However, this is an important place for the Shenjian Gate. Every Myriad Sword conference, the direct disciples would enter. In order to prevent any major accidents, the experts from the Shenjian Gate subdued barbarian beasts in the Myriad Sword battlefield to become the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield. As long as nothing major happens, the guardian won't interfere with the Myriad Sword battlefield. Chapter 493. Situ Myong himself did not expect to meet the rumored guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield, and it was even a demonic illusory realm savage beast expert. Sui's eyes moved slightly. Although he was surprised, he did not find it strange. The Myriad Sword battlefield was very important, and there were no experts from the Shenjian Gate inside. Therefore, it was normal for an expert from the Shenjian Gate to subdue a savage beast expert and secretly protect it. How dare you destroy the mystical spirit tree, steal all the mystical spirit fruits, control the beast horde, and disrupt the Myriad Sword battlefield? You must be punished. The elk looked at Sui and Sitamuyang. It was agile and elegant, and its 5-colored eyes flashed. It seemed to be a little surprised that these two youths had such ability. Ever since it had guarded the Myriad Sword battlefield, such a thing had never happened before. Senior, he is the son of the Shenjian Gate's Gate Master. Sui frowned when he heard this. It went without saying that this elk was the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield. Since it was the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield, it should be under the command of the Shenjian Gate. He hoped that Situ Muyang's identity would work. What son of the Shenjian Gate's Gate Master? It has nothing to do with me. No matter who it was that disrupted the order of the Myriad Sword battlefield, they must be punished. The elk spoke, its light fluctuating. It completely ignored Sui and spoke in human language. You were the first to enter that mysterious place. You must have obtained some kind of opportunity, right? Sui focused. This elk did not seem to care about Situ Muyang's identity and should have also entered the ancient forest. It even knew that he and Situ Muyang were the first to enter the ancient forest and obtain some kind of opportunity. What exactly do you want? This is the battlefield of myriad swords, and there are no rules to speak of. Even if we obtain some sort of opportunity or fortune, that's what we came here for. As the guardian of the battlefield of myriad swords, I'm afraid you can't interfere. Sitamuyang was panting with anger. This elk actually didn't put him in its eyes, which made him very unhappy. However, Sitamuyang was also wary. This elk was at the ethereal demon realm and was not an ordinary beast. If they really fought, he would not be its opponent. I am the guardian of the myriad sword battlefield, so I naturally have my limits. Hand over all the mystical spirit fruits and the opportunities you obtained in the ancient forest. You have lost the right to participate in the Myriad Sword Conference, and I will hand you over to the Shenjian Gate. The elk spoke, its expression not change. Don't go overboard. Sitamuyang said angrily. No matter what, he would continue to walk to the end of the Myriad Sword Conference. How dare you? The elk's not once word as boom. The seemingly slender and agile elk burst forth with multicolored light at this moment. Its aura swept out, and the multicolored light flooded the surroundings. It was incomparably powerful and imposing. Situ Muyang and Suyi's expressions changed at the same time. This elk was too powerful. The demon illusionary realm was indeed terrifying. His cultivation was much stronger than theirs. Sui and his people didn't have time to hesitate at all. Under the crushing pressure of the vast aura, it wasn't easy to avoid it. It had already enveloped the surroundings. Overlord Fist. In an instant, Su-yi went all out, no longer holding back the aura of a fifth-level origin spirit realm practitioner. Simultaneously, he struck out with his overlord fist. Gee! A ferocious bird's cry resounded. From beneath the sole of Situ Muyang's feet, the shadow of a huge black pung spread its wings and soared into the sky. Black light pervaded the air and illuminated the vast sky. Its cry pierced through the clouds and cracked the rocks. Tempest kick. At the same time, Situ Muyang's Wind Rider battle armor flapped its wings and soared into the sky. The gale on his body howled as a resplendent radiance rose like the sun. He stomped down. This stomp was powerful and swift. It caused the void to boil and a storm to sweep out, as if it wanted to shatter the void. Su-yi and Situ Muyang attacked with all their might. The destructive aura was incomparably ferocious. The convergence of light and storm was deafening, causing one's heart to tremble. The elk enveloped in multicolored light seemed to be moved when it sensed the aura. However, this elk was only moved. Its body swooped down and exploded with multicolored light. For no reason, the ground beneath it cracked open, and its aura was oppressive. The resplendent multicolored light rippled like waves, directly blocking the attacks of Su-yi and Situ Muyang. Sand and rocks flew everywhere. Huge rocks cracked, dust flew, and rocks were reduced to dust. The shadow of the dark nether pung was obliterated by the multicolored light. Situ Muyang's body was sent flying, blood spurting from his mouth. He was completely unable to resist. Puff! In the storm, Su-yi spat out blood and retreated. Su-yi's heart trembled. He knew best how terrifying this elk was. Just the aura of the impact alone was enough to make him unable to resist. While spitting out blood, Su-yi's back erupted with crimson light. He condensed a pair of Yuan Qi wings with the Fuyao 100 transformation steps. His feet tapped the ground a few times, and he flew backward. He soared into the sky and stabilized his momentum. A very special human. Very interesting. The multicolored eyes of the elk opened and closed. The light was resplendent, and there seemed to be a kind of shock in its eyes. It soared into the sky and pounced again. The surrounding void trembled. Wherever the elk passed, the multicolored light dyed the early morning sky. It was like a wave crushing towards Su-yi. Su-yi's expression was solemn. The crimson light in his eyes flickered. The wings condensed from the Fuyao 100 transformation steps shook, and the crimson light filled the air. He condensed a hand seal, and the light under his feet was extremely brilliant. Boom! Everything happened very quickly. The Yuan Qi covered his legs. At this moment, Su-yi's eyes flickered like lightning. It was dazzling, sharp, and terrifying. His temperament was like a god that had awakened. His robe fluttered, and his black hair fluttered behind him. It was as if there were mysterious and ancient patterns flowing on his feet. Unfamiliar runes gushed out, and a mighty aura swept across. Boom! He kicked out. The footprints were resplendent and as fast as lightning. In an instant, it was as if there were endless footprints. At this moment, Su-yi's aura was like the fury of thunder. It was powerful and terrifying. Oh, this kind of aura made the surrounding barbaric beasts want to crawl even more. Their eyes were filled with horror. The footprints collided with the multicolored light. Suddenly, the resplendent light exploded like a small sun. Bang, bang, bang. The surrounding void rumbled. The space seemed to be secretly distorted. The magnificent energy surged, and the ground below collapsed. Rumble, the void trembled, and the boulders collapsed. The mountains also rumbled, and the earth cracked. Oh, whoa! Such a terrifying aura made the souls of the barbaric beasts below tremble and roar endlessly. See latest chapter section, part 1-inch puff. However, Su-yi's figure continued to flap his wings and flew in a straight line in the air. Blood poured out of his mouth, and the ground trembled. The ground was densely covered with cracks. Low in the sky, the elk's expression changed. The aura on that young man's body suppressed it. Only it knew how much the aura suppressed it. That young man was too mysterious. Chapter 494. At this moment, Su Yi's mouth was dripping with blood, and his body was riddled with wounds. He looked miserable as he stared at the elk, stuffing the pill in his hand into his mouth with a solemn expression. The elk stared at him in astonishment. How could such a young man, who was only at the 5th level of Origin Spirit Realm, stand up? Although it was greatly affected by the attack, just now, even an ordinary human at the 1st level of Origin Spirit Realm would find it hard to stand up. Are you all right? This guy is too hard to deal with. Sitamyang was also riddled with wounds as he approached Su Yi. His condition was obviously worse than Su Yi's. Very troublesome. Su Yi smiled bitterly. He had indeed met his match this time. If we really can't do it, let's just hand over the mystical spiritual fruit and think of something else. Sitamyang pondered. This barbaric beast was the guardian of the battlefield of myriad swords, which meant that it had to obey the orders of the Shenjian Gate. Sitamyang could feel that this elk had yet to kill them. If they handed over the mystical spiritual fruit, they might be able to come up with something. QR update square root new plus. First post. Hand over the mystical spiritual fruit and the fortune you obtained. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you. The elk opened its mouth again. Its colorful eyes were frightening, and its slender body was emitting a terrifying aura that was as oppressive as a mountain. What fortune? I don't know. You're just at the ethereal demon stage. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? At most, we'll both suffer. As Sui said this, he secretly took a deep breath. He unsheathed the broken sword from his back and clenched it tightly in one hand. The last bit of Yuan Qi in his body surged as the Origin Supreme technique emitted a suppressive aura. His eyes were filled with a crimson glow. Su Yi knew what the mystical spiritual fruit was. Moreover, the mystical spiritual fruit had already been enhanced in the mysterious space. Handing over a treasure that had already fallen into his hands was never Su Yi's character. Even though demonic illusionary stage, savage demonic beasts were powerful, Su Yi had encountered them before. Back then in the barbaric demon forest, the elder of the Black Fiend sect was also at the Origin Void Realm. Su Yi had also defeated him, although it was with the help of the mysterious power within the broken sword. At this moment, Su Yi knew that he might not be able to unleash the power of the broken sword. However, if he were to really go all out, he might still be able to escape. After all, he still had the mysterious space on him that was specially made to deal with barbaric demonic beasts. This guy is too arrogant. Sitamyang wanted to take a detour, but he didn't expect that Su Yi was still planning to fight the elk head-on. This was a demonic, illusionary stage barbaric beast expert. To fight against a demonic illusionary stage expert with an essence spirit stage expert, this wasn't just arrogance, it was asking for a beating. Human young man, you're too arrogant. You might be a little extraordinary, but I'm afraid that your puny strength is far from enough. Hearing Su Yi's words, the radiant glow elk was very surprised. Its colorful eyes were fixed on Su Yi, emitting a terrifying light. You'll know once you try. I guarantee that you won't be able to gain much of an advantage. You'll pay the price. Su Yi gritted his teeth. Holding the broken sword in his hand, he waved his sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked straight at the radiant glow elk and said faintly, "There are many direct disciples of the Shenjian Gate here, and some of them aren't weak either. I reckon that many of them must have been alerted by now. At worst, both of us will suffer. When those direct disciples see you, I'm afraid they won't let you off." Are you threatening me? The radiant glow elk was a little startled. It seemed that this human young man was actually threatening it. It said in a clear voice, "You want to cause both of us to suffer? Dream on. As for those direct disciples, do you think I'll care about them? What's more, as far as I know, all the disciples of the Shenjian Gate are now looking for you." Su Yi's eyes moved inwardly. It seemed that this elk knew a lot of things. "If you don't believe me, you'll know once you try." Su Yi said. The Origin Supreme technique in his body was fully activated. A crimson light of vitality enveloped his body, and a majestic and destructive aura suddenly spread out. Looking at Su-yi, the radiant glow elk's colorful eyes rippled. It seemed to have felt some kind of aura, and its gaze quietly fluctuated. The aura of this human young man indeed made it afraid. It really didn't dare to be careless. Such a young man was too mysterious and special. For a moment, the elk couldn't grasp the situation in its heart. "Senior, why don't we make a deal?" Suddenly, Su-yi looked at the radiant glow elk and secretly rolled his eyes. "What kind of deal?" The radiant glow elk was secretly surprised. This was the first time it had met such a human young man. Since it had been guarding the battlefield of 10,000 swords, it had seen many outstanding young disciples of the Xinjiang Gate. However, this was the first time it had seen such a young man. The mystical spiritual fruit is indeed on me. However, with Senior's strength, it's useless to have the mystical spiritual fruit. Why don't I give Senior a big gift, and Senior will let us go? Su-yi looked at the elk and said, "You're giving me a big gift? Could it be that you obtained it from that secret place?" Hearing this, the elk's eyes flashed brightly. "We have indeed entered that place. To be honest, we obtained a lot of spiritual herbs. As for other things, we didn't obtain anything. As for whether or not other people obtained any opportunities, I don't know. Senior should have already entered that place. You'll know once you go and check it out." Su-yi's expression didn't change. Naturally, he couldn't reveal that he had obtained the mythical bird's inheritance. That kind of opportunity was also a great temptation to savage beasts. This elk guarded the battlefield of 10,000 swords and obeyed the orders of the Xinjiang Gate. Perhaps it also wanted to get a share of the opportunity. No one could be sure. The elk's eyes flickered as if it was thinking about something. It had been there before. Something shocking must have happened there, but it couldn't detect anything. Many disciples of the Xinjiang Gate had already entered, so it wasn't easy to investigate. Therefore, the elk didn't know whether Su-yi was telling the truth or not. "Senior, take a look at this item first. If you're satisfied with it, we'll talk about it." Su-yi gritted his teeth and threw out a jade bottle. "Chi." The elk raised its front hooves slightly, and an array of lights spread out, wrapping the jade bottle in front of it. An invisible energy wave pulled out the cork. Suddenly, the elk's eyes changed greatly. It couldn't help but tremble and instantly closed the cork. When the elk's colorful eyes looked at Su-yi again, its eyes fluctuated and its voice changed. "Where did you get this? Do you have more?" "I got it by accident. Senior should be very clear about the benefits. I'm afraid it's much more valuable than the mystical spiritual fruit. In exchange for Senior to let us go, Senior can pretend that you never saw us. It's a good deal." Chapter 495. Staring at Su-yi, the elk's aura fluctuated as it said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll rob you of your treasures after dealing with you? What if you have other treasures on you? I'm at the origin spirit realm and only want the mystical spiritual fruit. I don't have any other treasures. Since I'm able to hand over the treasure to you, I'm not afraid that you'll attack me. Although my cultivation isn't high enough, I'm still able to protect myself. At most, I'll fight to the death." Su-yi said, not daring to relax his aura. Staring at Su-yi, the elk seemed to be pondering over something as its colorful eyes flickered. "I can let you guys go. Consider this as forming a good karma. You guys can leave now. In 2 days, the exit will open 400 kilometers to the southeast. Many people have already rushed over. You guys take care." After a while, the elk spoke. Glancing at Su-yi, it leaped into the air and left. Is it leaving? Although Sitamyang roughly knew what Su-yi had given the elk, and that the spiritual liquid was a precious treasure, he was still rather surprised that the elk had actually let them go. His gaze towards Su-yi couldn't help but be filled with admiration. This fellow actually managed to negotiate a deal with a demonic illusory realm expert. "Let's go. Someone's coming." There was no time to waste. With such a huge commotion, Su-yi reckoned that quite a number of direct disciples had been alerted and were on their way here. With his current injuries, there was no way he could escape from the hands of those direct disciples. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The shocking commotion in the morning alerted the nearby disciples of the Xinjiang Gate, and they immediately rushed over. Oh, whoa! There's so many brute beasts. What's going on? An army of brute beasts. It must be Su Yi's doing. Su Yi seems to be able to control the brute beasts. He must be inside. The surrounding army of brute beasts made it clear that it was Su Yi's doing. It was rumored that Su Yi was able to control barbaric beasts, and because of this, he had plundered tens of thousands of inner court disciples. Charge in. We must find Su Yi. With the help of the direct disciples, the number of disciples of the Divine Sword sect also increased, even though there were many of them. They were not at a disadvantage. Look at me. L chapter, section 7 foot, swish, swish, bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, a great battle was on the verge of breaking out. Roaring like thunder, sword light violently swept across, and Yuan Qi of various attributes erupted. The muffled sound was like thunder, and the ground shook and cracked. Among the crowd, a white-robed young man stood tall and straight. His black eyes shone with a dazzling light. Wherever his figure passed, the barbarian beasts would be sent flying. Not far away, there was a slender figure with unfathomable footwork. Yuan Qi surged beneath his feet as he shuttled through the herd of beasts. He wore a light purple robe embroidered with green silk patterns. This figure was young, about 20 years old. He had a square jaw, clear eyes, sword-like eyebrows, and a handsome face. From time to time, there would be sword light in his hand. Wherever the sword light passed, the blood of the barbarian beasts would splatter. Swish! Among the herd of beasts, there was a man with a straight figure. His sharp eyes were like sword light. His elegant and handsome face was calm, but the sword light in his hand was like lightning. The corpses of the barbarian beasts in front of him were bleeding profusely. Beside him, another young man leaped into the air. He had a tall and slender figure, sharp eyebrows, thin lips, and a pair of dark red eyes. He seemed to be in his 20s, and his body was emitting an oppressive aura. His sword light was like a raging flame that swept in all directions. Oh, the beasts roared like thunder. Among the herd of beasts, a beautiful figure appeared. Yuan Qi surged from the soles of her feet. She leaped into the air and was surrounded by light. Her dress was like a mist, and the pattern was like a blooming lotus. The sword light in her hand was wreaking havoc. Behind this woman, there was another beautiful figure. Yuan Qi surged from the soles of her feet, and her body was dancing with her hair. Under the green water element light, she looked even more charming. Her phoenix eyes were shining with green light, and the corner of her mouth was curled up. The sword in her hand swept out. Every move she made was like a dancer, bringing about a kind of beauty. Swish, swish, the sword light was like a rainbow. This woman's sword moves were like a dance, incomparably beautiful and touching. However, wherever the sword light passed, the blood of the herd of beasts would splatter, and the ground would crack. Senior brother Yunling Feng, senior brother Nanli Ran, senior brother O Luo, senior brother Gu Qinyu, senior sister Sakura, Asaka, senior sister Gongqi. Are they all here? They actually appeared at the same time. This group of transcendents have all appeared. Su Yi must be inside. We must not let him escape again. The disciples of Shunjian Gate were in an uproar. The top-ranked experts of the Sword Pagoda were all here. This time, Su Yi would not be able to escape even if he had wings. Oh, on one side of the herd of beasts, a beautiful figure appeared. She was light and ethereal. Her orange clothes were fluttering in the wind, and her black hair was tied up in a ponytail behind her head. She had an otherworldly temperament, as if she was a fairy that had descended from the heavens. The beautiful figure was only 16 or 17 years old. Her red lips were tender, and her eyes were clear like water. Under her orange clothes, her body was graceful and slender, and her curves were curvy. A strange aura was released in the surrounding area. Oh, the strange thing was that after feeling the aura of this young girl, the surrounding beasts trembled for no reason. They did not dare to get close to her, and their fierce eyes were filled with fear. "Get out of my way," the young girl said. Her figure swept out, and a few strands of hair swayed in the wind, adding a bit of wild temperament. She quietly shuttled through the herd of beasts. While the battle was shocking, Su Yi and Sita Muyang had already left. When it came to finding a hiding place, Su Yi was already experienced. Otherwise, Su Yi would not have been able to stay in the barbaric demon forest for 3 years. The cliff was hard for apes to climb. In a hidden cave, Su Yi and Situ Muyang sat cross-legged and consumed elixirs to heal their injuries. This time, both of them were in a miserable state. They were severely injured, and they were not a match for the demonic illusory realm beasts. Situ Muyang was in a worse state. His old injuries had not healed, and now he had new injuries. Although the healing speed in the mysterious space was much faster, Su Yi did not dare to use the mysterious space casually after knowing that there was a guardian in the battlefield of myriad swords. Su Yi did not lack elixirs, and he was not stingy with himself. He consumed the elixirs and circulated the Origin Supreme technique to heal his injuries. He was about to reach the exit, and he could encounter those personal disciples at any time. The news of him possessing the mystical spiritual fruit had already spread. In addition, he had plundered the spatial bags of tens of thousands of inner disciples. Su Yi knew that once he was discovered, he would be in big trouble. He had to maintain his peak condition at all times. Chapter 496. The scarlet light on his body slowly converged, and a scarlet light flashed in his eyes. Su Yi's pale face also recovered its rosy color. Feeling the situation in his body, Su Yi's expression was not relaxed. He had taken a lot of medicinal pills to heal his injuries, but his injuries were only about 70 to 80% better. He had not fully recovered. At this moment, if someone knew about Su Yi's situation, they would be stunned. With such a serious injury, in just 1 day and 1 night, Su Yi had almost recovered, but he was still not satisfied. If it was an ordinary person under normal circumstances, no matter how talented they were, they would not be able to recover to 70 to 80% in less than 10 days or half a month. Phew! Feeling the aura fluctuations on Su Yi's body, Sita Muyang also stopped breathing and adjusted his breathing. A touch of rosy color hung on his face, and he was no longer pale. However, his situation was much worse than Su Yi's. It's almost time to go out, right? Sita Muyang looked at Su Yi with a bit of worship in his eyes. It should be tomorrow, but there's only one exit. Su Yi frowned slightly. Calculating the time, the exit would open tomorrow. Before entering the battlefield of 10,000 swords, Su Yi also knew about the situation of the exit. There is only one exit in the entire battlefield of 10,000 swords. On the day the exit opened, the disciples who did not go out within the stipulated time would be regarded as eliminated. At that time, even if he had enough sword pattern stones, he would not be able to enter the top 68 to ascend the Spirit Sword Peak for the final battle. Those direct disciples did not find him. With the temptation of the mystical spiritual fruit, it was not difficult for Su Yi to know that everyone would be waiting for him at the exit. No matter how strong he was, it would be difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands at that time. Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was already so tyrannical. Those direct disciples who were ranked higher would be more powerful than the previous one. What should we do? I'm afraid those guys won't give up so easily. Sita Muyang also knew how many people had been provoked in the myriad sword battlefield. Not to mention the allure of the mystical spiritual fruit in Su Yi's possession. Just the fact that Su Yi had plundered tens of thousands of inner disciples and the black brick in the past 2 days was enough to incite public anger. Once they appeared, they would definitely be besieged. Very troublesome. Su Yi pondered but couldn't think of a solution. There was only a single exit. Unless one chose to hide and not leave, one would definitely encounter all of the direct disciples. You've provoked too many people. You've angered everyone. Sita Muyang glanced at Su Yi. You have a part in the brick auction too. Su Yi glanced at Sita Muyang and reminded him. We'll share blessings and hardships together. I understand. Situ Muyang smiled embarrassedly. He knew that he had gained a lot in this myriad sword battlefield. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. Let's not worry about it now. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Garmy, first, I need to do something. Su-yi said. He wanted to enter the mysterious space and asked Situ Muyang to guard him. For safety's sake, Su-yi searched the surroundings. After confirming that it was safe, he called out the mysterious space. MX. In the mysterious space, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the rest were refining the mystical spiritual fruit after consuming it. Yuan Qi rippled from their bodies, and their auras rose. It wasn't hard to tell that they had benefited greatly from the mystical spiritual fruit. Lord, the mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf-head demon bat both came to Sui. Their eyes were filled with reverence, and their auras were vigorous. Have they both broken through? Feeling the aura of the mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf-head demon bat, Su-yi's lips curled into a smile. Su-yi wasn't surprised by the mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf-head demon bat's breakthroughs in such a short time. Immediately, Su-yi took out a pile of interspatial bags and opened them in the mysterious space. Unfortunately, the primeval stones in the interspatial bags couldn't be preserved and turned into dust. As the space in the mysterious space grew larger, it seemed that increasing the space in the mysterious space wasn't something that could be done with a small amount of primeval stones. After that, herbs, miscellaneous items, elixirs, spiritual herbs, weapons, and a pile of cultivation resources were placed in front of Su-yi. The interspatial bag of Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, became the focus of Su-yi. Sure enough, as Su-yi expected, the harvest was great. There were 13 sword pattern stones, a few stalks of spiritual herbs, elixirs, herbs, and a few sets of martial skills. However, these martial skills were ordinary. The profound and spiritual martial skills were from the Xinjiang Gate. Su-yi wasn't interested in them. However, martial skills were expensive, and he could exchange them for what he needed. In the end, Su-yi counted and found that there were 69 sword pattern stones in the interspatial bags. In addition to the sword pattern stones that he had, there were a lot of them. There were close to 150 of them. After leaving the elixirs in the mysterious space and planting the spiritual herbs and herbs, Su-yi waved his sleeves and stood up. Looking at the spiritual herbs and herbs in front of him, including the mystical spirit tree and a pile of elixirs, Su-yi smiled. This was his family's property, the property that he had painstakingly built. After tidying up everything, Su-yi took the wolf-head demonic bat leader and let the mystical sun golden demonic falcon stay in the mysterious space. It seems to have broken through. In the cave, when the wolf-head demonic bat appeared from the mysterious space, Situ Muyang felt that the wolf-head demonic bat's aura was much stronger than before. This kind of strength was not only in terms of cultivation level, but also from the inside out. That kind of feeling was like a metamorphosis, as if the bones and marrow had been cleansed. Ayo! The wolf-head demonic bat howled in a low voice, as if it was responding to Situ Muyang. There was a bloody light in its eyes. Only it knew what kind of benefits it had obtained this time. You've been here for too long. There's still quite a distance to the exit. We have to hurry, Situ Muyang said. Su-yi had stayed in there for nearly 6 hours. It was already noon, and the exit would open tomorrow. There was still quite a distance to the exit. No rush. We have enough time. Su-yi smiled slightly, walked out of the cave, and stretched. With the wolf-headed bat demon leader by his side, he had more than enough time, and also a little more assurance. A moment later, the sun rose from the east. The wolf-head demonic bat leader flapped its wings and soared into the sky, carrying Su-yi and Situ Muyang towards the southeast. On the back of the wolf-head demonic bat, the two youths' clothes were tattered and their hair was messy. They looked no different from beggars. However, the two of them were in a good mood, especially Su-yi. This trip to the myriad sword battlefield was quite fruitful. 6th level demon spirit realm. Even the top few direct disciples wouldn't be able to do anything to us. Chapter 497. Don't be careless. The wolf-headed demonic bat chief had benefited from reaching the 6th level of the origin spirit realm. Su-Yi could sense that the aura of the wolf-headed demonic bat wasn't far from the 7th level of the demon spirit realm. The wolf-headed demonic bat chief's flying speed was indeed a huge advantage, but he couldn't afford to be careless. Su-Yi estimated that the top few direct disciples were all extraordinary. They all had their own means, so he couldn't afford to be careless. I'll call you Wolf-Bat in the future, Su-Yi said to the wolf-headed demonic bat chief. Illo. The wolf-headed demonic bat responded with a roar. It spread its wings, emitting a blood-red glow. Its speed was astonishing. According to the wolf-headed demonic bat's speed, it wouldn't take long before tomorrow to reach the exit. Su-Yi began to ponder. Once they reached the exit, it would be the start of the trouble. Furthermore, the mystic sun golden demonic falcon and wolf-headed demonic bat had benefited from the mysterious space. Their futures were boundless. He wondered if he could bring them out. Do you think we'll have a chance if we force our way out when the exit opens? Sita Muyang asked Su-Yi. Someone's coming, just as Sita Muyang's voice faded. Su-Yi suddenly raised his gaze and looked behind him. Illo! The beast roared like thunder. A black light appeared behind him and gradually approached. Looking at it carefully, it was a huge, exotic beast. It looked like a dragon with 8 wings on its back. It didn't have claws under its abdomen, but its entire body was emitting a black light. Its pair of ferocious eyes emitted a chilling light that made one tremble. Its aura was ferocious and ferocious. It's the 8-winged demonic python. There's someone on it. Sita Muyang turned around and looked behind him. The ferocious exotic beast was the 8-winged demonic python that fought with the wolf-headed demonic bat not long ago. Su-Yi's gaze swept across the 8-winged demonic python. Shortly after, his pupils slightly shrank as his gaze fell on the figure on the back of the 8-winged demonic python. It was a graceful figure in orange clothes. She wasn't old. Her lips were tender, her eyes were clear, and her figure was slender and graceful under her orange clothes. It's her. Su-Yi's expression changed. How could he forget this girl? When he was about to leave the Xinjiang gate, it was because of the small 9 hell snake that he encountered this girl. Her cultivation was not bad, and they had fought before. It looks like a woman. Do you know her? Looking at Su-Yi's expression, Sita Muyang asked. Not really, but enemies often cross paths. Su-Yi helplessly smiled. He only knew that this young girl had said that she was called Mu Yao. However, this was a case of enemies meeting on a narrow road. He didn't know how this woman had managed to subdue the 8-winged demon python. So, she had caught up with him at this moment. Perhaps she wouldn't have any good intentions. The last time they fought, there was no clear victor. However, Su-Yi knew that the girl was strong. Although Su-Yi had not used his full strength last time, he had broken through a lot during this period of time. However, Su-Yi also knew that the girl did not use her full strength last time. Furthermore, judging from the current situation, Mu Yao was able to subdue the 8-winged demon python, which is at the peak of the 5th level demon spirit realm. Su-Yi, our previous battle hasn't ended yet. How about we fight now? Mu Yao said on the back of the 8-winged demon python. She had been searching for so long, and she finally found this guy. She's just a little girl. Why don't we deal with her first? She might have a sword pattern stone on her. Sita Muyang was eager to give it a try. This girl was the one who delivered herself to his doorstep. He could feel that the girl wasn't ordinary. She might have a sword pattern stone on her. Su-Yi rolled his eyes at Sita Muyang. The little devil in this guy's heart has been completely awakened. A little girl? That Mu Yao seems to be a little older than this guy. This girl isn't easy to deal with. It's better to avoid her. Su-Yi shook his head and said to Sita Muyang, if this guy knew about Mu Yao's strength, he wouldn't say such words. Immediately after, Su-Yi ordered the wolf bat to fly at full speed. Now wasn't the time to fight with the girl. Once they did, it would attract the attention of the direct disciples nearby. "Oh!" the wolf-headed demonic bat responded. It flapped its wings, emitting a blood-colored radiance. Its speed suddenly increased. Do you think you can run away? Chase after him. On the back of the eight-winged demon python, Mu Yao's expression changed. Her black hair was tied behind her head. Her hair danced in the wind, giving her a wild beauty. The eight-winged demon python chased after her. The pitiful eight-winged demon python recognized Su Yi, who was on the back of the wolf-headed demonic bat. There was still lingering fear in its heart. That fear was still vivid in its mind. However, it had no choice but to chase after him. Su Yi, you won't be able to run away. A voice mixed with yuan qi came out from Mu Yao's mouth, resounding in the air. Her master actually thinks that this kid isn't ordinary. She said that there's always someone better than you. That can't be referring to this kid, right? If it wasn't for her master, she wouldn't have left. Ever since they arrived at the myriad sword battlefield, Mu Yao had been looking for this fella. She heard that this fella still had a lot of sword pattern stones on him. Most importantly, he also had the mystical spiritual fruit that she wanted. Although the eight-winged demon python was fast, it couldn't catch up to the wolf bat. At the same level, the eight-winged demon python and the wolf-headed demonic bat were about the same in terms of speed. However, the eight-winged demon python was heavily injured by Su Yi last time. It was still injured for a short period of time. On the other hand, the wolf bat was different. Not only did it recover from its injuries, it also received great benefits. It even broke through to the 6th level of the demon spirit realm. It even reached the 7th level of the demon spirit realm. Therefore, the eight-winged demon python simply couldn't catch up with the wolf bat in terms of speed at this moment. The wolf bat had left the eight-winged demon python far behind in a short, while under the full acceleration of the wolf bat. Su Yi, if you have the ability, don't run. You bastard, hurry up. It's the SK version. Chapter A0 ****. Mu Yao was so angry that she pouted her tender red lips, then angrily stomped on the eight-winged python's foot. Roar! The eight-winged demon python was very helpless. It was suffering unspeakably. It was also very shocked at this moment. That wolf-headed demonic bat was unexpectedly so fast. It seemed that its cultivation had skyrocketed a lot. It had already gone all out. However, there was no way it could catch up with it. Su Yi, where do you think you're going? You can't escape. Looking at the disappearing figure of the wolf-headed demon bat, Mu Yao's eyes suddenly moved. Her angry face revealed a smile, and her voice was mixed with yuan qi as she shouted. Su Yi, you can't escape. Hand over the mystical spirit fruit and the sword pattern stone. The voice mixed with yuan qi came from Mu Yao's mouth. It was like a clap of thunder, resounding through the air and echoing through the forest. Huh, that little girl must be mad with anger. Too bad, she can't catch up with us. Sita Muyang laughed. With the wolf bat's current speed, the eight-winged demon python couldn't catch up with them. She's not mad with anger. She's doing it on purpose. Su Yi bitterly smiled. His expression darkened. That woman is too sinister. Roar, roar. Chapter 498. Immediately after, many beasts soared into the sky from all directions. There was a four-winged, crimson beast with a powerful aura. There was a white spiritual horse with a pair of wings on its back. Its body was strong, and its body was glowing. There was a huge butterfly with electric arcs on its wings. When it flapped its wings, it was as if lightning filled the air. In an instant, numerous savage beasts soared into the sky and appeared from all directions. Every single one of them was formed from elemental energy and looked extremely lifelike. On the backs of these beasts were the figures of young men and women. Their figures were extraordinary, and their auras were powerful. Four-winged hellfire beast, cloud dragon colt, thunderclap butterfly. Situ Muyang's expression changed. The beasts formed for vitality were all very powerful. They were not much weaker than his nether void rock. The figures on the beasts formed from vitality were also very powerful. Awoo! The beasts soared into the sky from all directions. Their auras were powerful. They soared into the sky and surrounded Su Yi. Let's see how you escape this time. On the back of the eight-winged demon python, Mu Yao smiled. Her delicate red lips pouted. She was young, but she was already a national beauty. This is troublesome. That little girl did it on purpose. She wants to attract all the direct disciples. What should we do now? At this moment, Sita Muyong finally understood. That woman had done it on purpose by causing such a huge commotion. She wanted to lure out the powerful personal disciples nearby to surround Su Yi and him. Wolf Bat, avoid them. Su Yi's eyes darkened as he swept his gaze across the area. Although the direct disciples who were chasing after them were strong, they were still in mid-air. Their speed might not be as fast as the wolf bats, and the consumption of their energy would not be less than that of the wolf bats. Oh, the wolf bat growled, and its eyes were fierce. It had just undergone a metamorphosis. In terms of speed, how could it be slower than the beast's form from vitality? It spread its wings, and a murderous aura spread across the sky. When the beasts rushed forward to surround it, it had already avoided them. Su Yi, where are you going? Hand over the mystical spirit fruit and the sword pattern stone. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape. Awu. In an instant, the ancient world shook. The roars of the beasts and the shouts merged together, deafening the ears as they soared into the sky. His aura swept across the sky. Not long after, there were beasts formed from Yuan Qi that soared into the air, rushing out from the mountains and forests, joining the formation that surrounded Su Yi. The speed of the wolf bat was very fast, but at this moment, under the encirclement of the beast phantoms that appeared from all directions, it could not help but be greatly affected, and its speed was greatly reduced. QP starter Y fortunately, with the wolf bat's current speed, even though it was greatly reduced, it was still able to avoid the beasts coming from all directions. The shadow of a black falcon was emitting black light. It was very fast. On the back of the black falcon, a young man in his 20s appeared in front of the wolf bat. He had distinct facial features and a cold expression on his face. He wore a tight black battle suit, and a gray cape fluttered behind him. He looked at Su Yi and said, "Let's continue the battle." Oh. The wolf bat flapped its wings, and its body drew an arc in the air as it dodged the attack. No! Su Yi waved his hand and left. That guy doesn't seem weak. Do you know him? Sword 11, ranked 15th in the Sword Pagoda. Back then, he was defeated by me. He seemed a little unconvinced. Su Yi chuckled. He did not expect to see Sword 11 again. This is not good. There are more and more people chasing after us. Sita Muyong was not surprised. Sword 11 was only ranked 15th in the Sword Pagoda. Zhang Lingyun, ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was no match for him. However, looking at the increasing number of beasts formed from Yuan Qi around them, he also became a little nervous. Su Yi also focused. There were many personal disciples in the entire Xinjiang Gate. There were thousands of them. Those who could become personal disciples were all at the origin spirit realm and could form Yuan Qi. Usually, those who chose to form Yuan Qi were flying barbaric beasts. Therefore, at least half of the personal disciples' Yuan Qi forms were flying barbaric beasts. Adding up the number, there were at least thousands. If thousands of personal disciples formed Yuan Qi to surround them, no matter how fast the wolf bat was, it would not be able to dodge. Awo! The beast roared like thunder. More and more beasts formed from Yuan Qi appeared in all directions, shaking the clouds. The wolf bat was getting more and more tired. There were a few times when it was about to be surrounded. Su Yi, you can't escape. You can't escape even if you have wings. The 8-winged demonic python took the opportunity to catch up. Black light filled the air. Mu Yao spoke with a smile on her delicate face. Mu Yao looked at everything that she had caused proudly. No matter how cunning Su Yi was, he would not be able to escape from her palm. That little girl is too cunning. Sita Muyong looked back at Mu Yao, who was on the back of the 8-winged demonic python. He looked at her from afar with an angry expression. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. When you grow up, you must be more careful. The more beautiful a woman is, the more poisonous she is. Su Yi said, this woman was so cunning at such a young age. When she grew up, she would be even worse. He had underestimated this woman. Is that so? When you get married in the future, will you find an ugly woman? The uglier she is, the more you like her? Sitamuyang was somewhat puzzled and asked Sui. Sui fiercely glared at Sitamuyang and snappily said, "What does a little brat know? Didn't you say so?" Sitamuyang curled his lips and looked at the beast's form from Yuan Shi in all directions. He said to Su, "We should quickly think of a way. Otherwise, it will be really troublesome." Su pondered. At this moment, the personal disciples were surrounding them from all directions. Even if they wanted to escape now, there was no way. There must be a way. Su pondered for a moment. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. "Come, then the more the better. If you want to trick me, then let's see who will deal with who." Su smiled with a smile in his eyes. He looked at the sunset, and the sky was close to dusk. He said to the wolf bat, "Go to the exit. What method have you thought of? Quickly tell us." Sitamuyang curiously asked. "You will know when the time comes." Su smiled but did not speak. He had almost forgotten one thing. The sun was setting in the west. The setting sun was like blood enveloping this ancient world. "Oh!" The beasts roared like thunder. The overwhelming Yuan Shi transformed into beasts suspended in the sky. Their aura soared into the sky. Thousands of beasts, thousands of figures, thousands of personal disciples of the Xinjiang Gate, stepping on Yuan Shi transformed beasts, surrounded Su and Sitamuyang. This was definitely the most united of all the personal disciples of the Xinjiang Gate. There was no need to say anything. They surrounded Su with all their strength. Chapter 499. In an instant, figures shuttled back and forth in the dense forest, exuding powerful auras. Barbarian beasts formed from vitality roared, shaking the mountains. In midair, the wind and clouds surged, spreading in all directions. All of this was to surround Su. Such a scene made people click their tongues. Su won't be able to escape this time. Everyone has surrounded him, but this kid still wants to ride on a barbarian beast as a mount. He thinks he'll be fine, but he's too smart for his own good. This brat is able to make all the direct disciples surround him. He could be considered the only one in the Divine Sword sect that has never been done before. I don't know if there will be anyone in the future, but it's definitely unprecedented. Many of the outer and inner disciples clicked their tongues. They could only watch the show, but they couldn't participate in the encirclement. "We must stop that kid. He's too despicable. He actually robbed all of us. We can't let him go." The inner sect disciples were all gnashing their teeth in anger, and they were filled with hatred. They had been robbed clean by Su the moment they entered the battlefield of 10,000 swords. In the past month, they had been hiding in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. How could they not be angry? Roar! The wolf bat roared, and a blood-red mist spread out from its body, covering a large area of the void. Its aura was terrifying. The blood-red mist rolled like waves, and the surging blood-red aura affected the surrounding void. At this moment, the wolf bat was moving at its maximum speed, shuttling back and forth among the beasts in all directions, making it difficult for the surrounding beasts to do anything. The sky was getting darker, and the bright moon was beginning to rise. Roar! The moonlight shrouded the wolf bat, and there was a dense glow on its body, invisibly attracting each other. Boom! At this moment, the wolf bat's aura began to strengthen, as if the energy it had expended along the way was slowly being restored. The wolf bat has a talent. It's even stronger at night. Sitamuyang also felt that this was the talent of the wolf bat. At night, it was much stronger than other barbarian beasts of the same level. As for those personal disciples who had been surrounding Su, they had expended a lot of energy. The wolf bat took the opportunity to break out of the encirclement and finally escape from the large encirclement. Although there were still some personal disciples surrounding them, with the speed of the wolf bats, they were not much of a threat. That was close. Good job, wolf bat. Sitamuyang heaved a sigh of relief. The past 4 hours had been thrilling. He had never been surrounded by so many people before. Continue to walk towards the exit, Su said with a faint smile on his face. He stared down below as if he was searching for something. Oh, the roars of those beasts were getting farther and farther away. Yishuan had completely gotten rid of those pro-disciples who had besieged him. The 8-winged demon python was also left far behind. However, Su-yi knew that this kind of escape was only temporary. Those personal disciples would definitely not give up. Of course, Su-yi did not plan on completely getting rid of those personal disciples. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Its silver brilliance illuminated this ancient world. Under the moonlight, the outlines of the mountains and ravines were clear, and the shadows of the trees were dancing. The bloodlight on the wolf bat's body fluctuated, reflecting the radiance of the bright moon. Far away, a winding mountain range appeared, winding and spiraling, like a huge dragon sleeping in the night. The mountain range was continuous, as if it had cut across the battlefield of 10,000 swords. The surrounding peaks were surrounded by clouds and mist. That's the place. That's the place where the exit will open tomorrow, Sita Muyang said. That mountain range was the place where the exit would open. Wolfbat, go there. Su-yi looked around and pointed to a mountain range not far away. There, ancient trees towered into the sky. Verdant and hazy mist shrouded the area. The wolf-bat understood. It spread its wings and dived into the mountain range. Its bloody figure was submerged in the mountain range. Chase, the exit is in front. That brat can't escape. Uxie/correct. Section 7. Part 1, Cool D Craftsman #NetYW. Where else can he escape to? Chase. Night. Everywhere was boiling, and the atmosphere was overflowing. The personal disciples who were left far behind by the wolf-bat did not give up. The temptation of the mystical spiritual fruit and the sword-patterned stone was irresistible to everyone. In the night, the 8-winged demonic python's body was covered in black light, faintly discernible in the night. Let's see where you can escape to. Muyao's face was a little ugly. That guy was actually able to escape from her. The mountain range was continuous, and the mountains were uprooted from the ground, piercing into the clouds. On the tallest mountain, there were rugged rocks, and a crack was split open, as if it was split open by a giant axe. The surrounding area was densely packed with towering ancient trees. What was even more strange was that most of the peaks were swallowed by the clouds, leaving only the mountain peaks. It was as if one had walked into a fairyland. Su-yi, Situ Muyang, and the wolf-bat concealed their auras and hid inside the crack. What are we doing here? If someone chases us, it will be very troublesome. Situ Muyang had already sized up the surroundings. The terrain here was the highest, and it would be troublesome for others to come up. However, if all the personal disciples were to rush over, it would be difficult for them to escape, even if they had wings. If they were to be surrounded, even Langbat would not be able to escape. I'm afraid they won't come. Su-yi smiled, and a light flashed in his eyes. He found a pile of dead branches and leaves and tied them with vines, making 2 straw men. He tied them tightly to the wolf-bat's back and then instructed the wolf-bat, go around and attract their attention. When the sun rises, there's no need to hide. Come back here directly. Ayo! The wolf-bat roared in response and flapped its wings to fly away. It was like a tiger that had grown wings in the moonlight. What are you trying to do? Sita Muyang was surprised. Su-yi not only did not avoid them, but also purposely attracted everyone. You'll find out tomorrow. Let's do some breathing exercises first. We'll be busy tomorrow. Su-yi's expression was leisurely, and he stuffed a few healing pills into his mouth. Then he sat down cross-legged on the ground and continued to do his breathing exercises. He was not afraid of exposing his identity. Sita Muyang did not understand. His face was filled with doubt, and his heart was a little nervous. But Situ Muyang more or less understood Su-yi's character and chose to believe in Su-yi. At least for tonight, Su-yi would be able to toy with all the personal disciples. These unlucky personal disciples. Thinking about how those personal disciples would chase after the 2 straw men, Situ Muyang suddenly felt a little sorry for them. Since he was still injured, Sitamuyang immediately continued to do his breathing exercises to heal himself. He did not have much time to feel sorry for others. Which wolfhead demon bat is it? It's Su-E and Sitamuyang. The mysterious spirit fruit and sword pattern stone are on them. Where do you think you're going? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.